Welcome, everyone. This is a special meeting of the Planning Board of Asbury Park. Today is Thursday, June 3rd, 2021, and it is 6 p.m. Barbara, would you please call us to order?
Calling the meeting to order. The following meeting is being conducted by electronic means in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, amended in 2020, which explicitly permits a public body to conduct meetings electronically during a state of emergency. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and Asbury Park Press. All notices are on file with the board secretary. In addition, a notice regarding this virtual meeting and instructions were published to the Asbury Park Press and the City of Asbury Park website. A copy of the notice is on file with the board secretary. The notices and conduct of this meeting are in accordance with the guidelines of virtual meetings issued by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Please note, all microphones of public users are muted until the public question or comment period. If you would like to speak during that time only, please use the raise hand button in Zoom if on a computer, or dial *9 on a telephone. Your name and or last 4 digits of the phone number will be called when it is your turn to speak. If at any time during your question you are deemed to be out of line or topic, we reserve the right to mute your microphones and will make an announcement that this has occurred. During the public comment section only, the public will have 3 minutes to speak. Please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices during the meeting. Please identify yourself before you speak. And this meeting is being recorded and will be available to view via APTV. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I will now take roll call. Okay. Mayor John Moore.
Here.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton.
Here.
Michael Manzella.
Here.
Jim Henry.
Here.
Jennifer Souter.
Here.
Trudy Syfax is absent. Alexis Taylor. Alexis Taylor, I think you're muted.
Oh.
There we go. Oh, Alexis, can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Here. Sorry.
Thank you. Eric Gallipo.
Here.
Rick Lambert. Okay, Rick is not here yet. So we will mark him as absent, and when he does hop on, we'll state that for the record. And Barbara Krizak.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have our application for today is the AP Block 4001 Venture Urban Renewal LLC. Let's move forward.
Okay, if I may, Madam Chairwoman. I've reviewed the submissions, notices to the public, affidavit of publication, list of certified list of property owners within 200 feet from the city tax assessor. All is in order, notices are proper, and we have jurisdiction to proceed in this matter.
Terrific. All right, Ms. Smith.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. My name, for the record, is Jennifer Phillips Smith. I am an attorney with Gibbons PC, and I am here this evening on behalf of AP Block 4001 Venture Urban Renewal LLC. The applicant is the designated subsequent developer for Block 4001, lots 2 through 12, which is in the waterfront redevelopment area. Between 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue. And as you see up on the screen before you, this project is the first large-scale rental project that's being proposed for the waterfront redevelopment area. You may have seen this when it came before TRC that some of you sit on, or when it came before council for our presentation, but there's been a great deal of effort over the course of the last year plus to come up with a rental project that would work within the waterfront redevelopment area. This project is unique in that it includes both a mixed-use multifamily building that has apartment-style rental units, 206 of them, along with a parking garage, an amenity deck, and ground floor retail. But then there's also a component that includes 20 townhomes that would be for rent, which are, 3-bedroom family size units. Tonight, we are before you seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval, as well as minor subdivision approval, and 5 design exceptions from your architectural guidelines that we will get into further in testimony this evening. You will hear first this evening from Jerry Simon, who is our architect for the project. You'll also hear from Jared Moran, who is our landscape architect, Sean Delaney, our engineer, and Keenan Hughes, who is the planner for this project. We did, as you heard from Mr. Serpico, provide public notice. And before we get moving with Mr. Simon, I would like to mark into evidence the affidavit that we provided to the board secretary and to mark that as Exhibit A1.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Irina, you'll take care of that?
Yes, it's already pre-marked Exhibit A1, and that is available on the planning board website.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, then I would like to get started and call up Jerry Simon to begin our presentation this evening.
Okay, before I swear in Mr. Simon, I have a question for the board. I believe I saw Jason somewhere in here. Yes, there's Jason.
I'm here.
Is there anyone here from T&M Associates?
Yes.
Stan Slick? Okay.
Yes, hi.
Okay, how are you, Stan?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself today?
I'd like to get my staffers signed in or sworn in as well.
Yeah, Jack, we also have a Junkie Patel, a licensed professional planner from T&M, who may be conversing during the course of the meeting, so she should be sworn in as well.
Okay, so Jennifer, you don't mind, I'll swear in mine, get those reports entered in, and then we'll swear in Mr. Simon. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, with the staffers from the planning board, 2 planners, 1 engineer, please raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, starting with Jason, you're in the lower left-hand corner. Please identify yourself and your affiliation with the board.
Jason Fitchter, board planner.
Okay, Stan, you're in the center, so if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yes, Stan Slahetka from T&M Associates. We're the conflict planner for the board on this application.
Okay, Ms. Patel, would you please also identify yourself and give us your affiliation as well?
Yes, Janki Patel, I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, and you work for T&M Associates?
Correct.
Okay, so therefore you're part of the board staff for this matter.
Correct.
Thank you. Irina, could we mark in the insight report since Jason went first as possibly B1 or whatever you might designate it as?
Yes, sir. Let's mark it as Exhibit B1.
Okay, and that's Jason's report dated May 25th, 2021?
Yes.
Okay, and Jennifer Smith, you have a copy, I assume?
I do. And just for clarification on the record, Insight is acting as the engineer on this file, correct?
That is correct.
I misspoke. Thank you.
Oh, okay, I thought I recognized you as the engineer, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, and the next report would be the report from T&M Associates authored by Mr. Slachekta and Kendra Lely, L-E-L-I-E, is that correct?
That is
And
correct.
that would be dated May 26, 2021. Would that be B2?
That will be marked into evidence as B2.
Okay, and I'm sorry for the out of order presentation. The resolution of referral from the mayor and council acting as the redevelopment authority over to the planning board authorizing us to take action this evening. Could you mark that as well, please?
Yes, we'll mark that as Exhibit B3.
Okay, I am ready to swear in Mr. Simon if I can find him. Yes, he is. Upper right-hand corner. Mr. Simon, thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please, you can lower your hand. Please state your name for the record and your affiliation with the applicant, and I'm sure Ms. Smith is going to ask you some questions.
All right. My name is Jerry Simon. I'm a principal with Lassard Design. We're located at 8521 Leesburg Pike, 7th floor, Vienna, Virginia, 22182.
Before you begin, Mr. Simon, if you could ask DK, who's with you, to start loading up the exhibits, starting with A2. And while he's doing that, I'm going to ask you a few questions so that we can qualify you as an expert in the field of architecture. So For the benefit of the board, can you please summarize your background, your education, and your licensure in the state of New Jersey?
My architectural schooling was with the California Polytechnic University at Pomona. And then I continued the California State University at Fullerton for environmental studies. And I am licensed in a number of states and Commonwealths, New Jersey being one, and in good standing.
Excellent. I would like to offer Mr. Simon this evening as an expert in the field of architecture.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. If we can put up Exhibit A2, because I will be asking you questions about those exhibits. Hopefully the screen sharing is coming. There it comes. All right, perfect. Perfect. That always makes me nervous. So before you begin, just for the benefit of the board, the exhibits that we provided to the board secretary that are now posted on the public website have been pre-marked, starting with Exhibit A2. We had just marked our affidavit of service as A1. So as we go through, they're pre-marked in the upper right-hand corner. I know it's a little tiny. Exhibit will start with A2, and then they will be marked A3, A4, and so on as we go through the slide deck. So Mr. Simon, as we start here with Exhibit A2, can you please provide the board with a general overview concerning the project's location, and then start to describe the project for us?
Okay. The project is located on Block 4001. It's bounded by 4th Avenue to the north, Kingsley Street to the east, 3rd Avenue to the south, and Berg Street to the west. On the eastern portion of the property, the applicant proposes a mixed-use building consisting of 206 dwelling units, 4,600 square feet of retail, and an enclosed parking structure. On the west portion of the property, the applicant proposes 20 townhomes with related parking and amenities, and the proposed project will be constructed in 3 phases. Phase A will consist of 206 apartment-style dwelling units and related facilities on the eastern portion of the property. The proposed mixed-use building varies in height from 3 to 6 stories, and a maximum height of 6 stories is permitted on Block 4001. The 3-story portion of the building creates an east-west opening between the 2 6-story portions of the building along 3rd and 4th Avenues. The amenity deck with a swimming pool and seating area will be located above the 3rd story. Approximately 4,600 square feet of commercial space fronting on Kingsley Avenue will provide a pedestrian connection to the street level. A total of 249 parking spaces will be provided on site within the parking garage, and an additional 60 spaces will be provided within the existing parking garage located directly across Kingsley Street in the Asbury Ocean Club. The proposed architecture is consistent with the WRP's design principles of developing new residential buildings that are compatible with the Asbury Park's special oceanside character in a contemporary way. The multifamily building is designed with a contemporary palette of white brick, gray stucco, gray and dark gray cementitious fiber siding, which is compliant with the WRP's architectural design guidelines. The overall facade comprises adheres to the base, middle, and top described in the WRP. Residential facades are divided into a series of vertical bays differentiated by changes in cladding material, color, and changes in facade plane. Balconies are also an additional architectural element that contribute to the facade's composition. No street walls extend beyond 100 feet without a break. The same level of detailing and transparency is provided on all 4 sides of the building and courtyard. The proposed aluminum windows are consistent with the guidelines set forth in the WRP, and retail storefront are aluminum. All signage will comply with a maximum height of 3 feet allowed by the WRP. Additionally, we have proposed an optional use or option using bifold commercial glass doors at the southeast retail corner, allowing for open space seating and dining.
And we'll pause here for a moment. If you go back just 2 slides for a second. So
And I'm sorry, Jennifer and Mr. Simon, to interrupt, but Mr. Lambert just joined us. So I'd like to just put that on the record. He joined at 6:15 p.m.
thank you. So just going back one more slide back. There you go.
All right.
If you could just highlight where we're talking about on the building when we are going to talk about this option for bifold doors.
Well,
Perhaps
this
we
is
can-
facing 3rd Avenue. You'll see on the right-hand corner. Can you see our cursor?
Yes.
That area we've optioned as in lieu of a storefront, a bifold commercial glass door. And then if you want to go to the next. And then this is a, this photo or this particular view is from 3rd Avenue and Kingsley, looking at the corner, where potentially on the left side, bottom left, is the garage or the garage doors, the commercial doors, completely open for open dining and seating. On the right-hand side, you'll see that's what they would look like if they were closed. So whether, and we're looking at an option of having all 4 or maybe 1 or a combination thereof, and that hasn't been determined at this point.
So in the previous elevations that you showed a few exhibits back, it showed what that corner would look like with what we'll call traditional storefront.
Traditional storefront, correct.
And then this option, my understanding is if the tenant, which at this point we don't know exactly who the tenants will be, but if the tenant were to come in and were a type of cafe or a use that wanted to have this open air optionality, that this would be an approved optional set of storefront that could be used for that tenant. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, correct.
So just to clarify that for the board, this option, and Mr. Simon, if you could clarify this, but this option was chosen as an option, as a secondary option, because of the current climate and sort of what we have seen through current uses over the past year, that having a secondary option like this to allow for more pedestrian movement and the ability to have indoor-outdoor dining is something that other uses in Asbury Park have started to do. Is that your understanding as well, Mr. Simon?
Yes, and it certainly gives the applicant a lot more flexibility with the type of tenant that would be able to come in here.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue describing the multifamily.
I think it's also a stronger connection to the streetscape as well, ultimately. Okay. The parking will be completely enclosed and screened with a light gray plaster facade and architectural grills over the openings, which mimic the fenestration pattern of the residential upper stories. This perspective illustrates the transition in height from the Asbury Ocean Club to the residents to the west, as far as the different height in building. Additionally, if you can see along the garage, the landscaping along the facade of the parking structure will provide additional visual interest and separation to enhance the appearance. Lighting for the multifamily building will be wall fixtures that wash up and down in a rhythm along the garage facade and retail area. The second type of lighting, we're looking at a halo effect on the northeast and southeast corners running from the ground level up along the roof and roof projection.
All right. And I know that we are going to be asking Mr. Delaney to provide more technical testimony concerning the lighting. But if you could move to the proposed townhomes now and describe the general architectural features of those proposed buildings.
Okay. This is phase B and C are proposed to consist of 20 townhomes on 0.8 acre portion of the property. The townhomes are configured as 4 separate buildings with each containing 5 attached dwellings. The buildings will be 4 stories, which is consistent with the maximum height permitted in this portion of Block 4001. An internal courtyard amenity space for residents will be located between the overlapping phases. Access to will be provided via driveways from 3rd Avenue for buildings 1 and 2, from 4th Avenue for buildings 3 and 4. Each townhouse dwelling will have a 2-car parking space and a 1st-story garage accessed by the internal driveway. The overall,
Excuse me, will someone else be speaking to the driveways? Because you
Yes.
mentioned them, but we didn't see them. Will someone else be speaking to that?
Madam Chairwoman, we will have Mr. Delaney speak to
Okay.
the driveways and how the cars will be able to access and behind the buildings.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. That's a very good question.
okay. The overall facade composition for the townhomes adheres to the base, middle, top format described in the WRP. The entrance along 3rd and 4th Avenue will have stoops separated from the sidewalk by a landscape strip and a 3-foot decorative fence. All proposed building materials comply with the WRP architectural guidelines. The townhome facades will be cladded in white brick, and the bay projections finished with a white fiber cement panel. Each dwelling will have a terrace at the 4th story with a decorative metal trellis and railing. Juliet balconies provide further articulation and visual interest to the facades, and the same level of detailing and transparency is provided on all 4 sides of each of the buildings as well. Lighting for these townhomes is a series of wall wash fixtures as well. The first will be located, or the first type of fixture will be located at the front and garage doors, which you'll see is that white fixture. The second fixture is a wall wash that washes up and down in several locations along the front elevation on 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue. And the second washes down only on the side elevations. And this is very similar to what we did on the Vive product. That's pretty much my kind of overview. As Jennifer said, there's some relief issues that I guess we will address, and then
Yes, I have a few more questions for you. So the first, as you mentioned, is that the relief that is required. I have here that there are 5 requests for relief from the architectural guidelines. And I'd like to just run through them with you. The first is that on page 61 of the waterfront redevelopment plan, it indicates that building walls shall show no more than 2 materials in addition to the basement or undercroft, and that materials shall change only along a horizontal line with a heavier material below the lighter. Can you describe the architectural elements here and how they don't necessarily comply with that requirement, but produce a building that is aesthetically pleasing?
Well, we've used basically 4 materials on the building with respect to brick, stucco, and cementitious fiber, and there is a minimal amount of aluminum panels at the entry. For the most part, given the fact that it's a large building and it's unlike the Ocean Club across the street. It has a lot of facets to it as far as the wall planes, and we wanted to play on those vertically where we use darker material within those recessed areas to actually break down the size of the building as far as its linear look. So that's where the verticality comes, and the fact that we've used the same material but in different colors.
And when we were before the TRC meeting, I believe there was a request to incorporate more horizontal breakup and vertical breakup both of the building. Is that correct?
Yes, the TRC asked us because in our dark vertical areas, they were asked us actually to try and bring those all the way down to the ground to even break down the building in smaller components than what we originally had. They also had asked for additional material, well, actually a color, which is at the retail component or the retail awnings, which we picked up the accent color from the Ocean Club.
All right, so that was the first request for relief, was to have those materials that change along vertical lines. The second is from page 62, that doors shall be painted wood or composite wood. Can you describe the doors that are proposed in this project?
Well, given the type of project this is, as far as we typically have to use, because of the corridors and their ratings, we have to use labeled and rated doors, and they are typically metal doors. So they're either foam filled, but they are a solid door, but they're also a labeled and rated door, which typically you cannot get. You don't have as much of a choice in wood as you do the metal doors.
Right. There's also relief needed from page 62 of the waterfront redevelopment plan, which indicates that windows shall have a minimum 4-inch post. And here the 4-inch post is not provided. Can you describe what that means?
Well, we've elected not to use the 4-inch post between them. We've actually doubled up and tripled up the windows to create a larger glazing area in appearance when you're internal. So it feels more like, in a sense, kind of a bay window. And that was really a design choice. Excuse me.
I would assume that would provide more light into the units.
Yes, because we are using oversized windows.
All right, that actually ties into the next request for relief, which is from page 64 of the waterfront redevelopment plan, which indicates that windows shall be rectangular with a height to width ratio between 1 to 1.6 and 1 to 3. And I believe our windows have a different ratio, being that they are single, double, and triple style windows. So can you explain what that means?
Well, the fact, excuse me, the fact that we're larger windows, our ratio obviously changes. So in order to comply with that ratio, we have to use smaller windows, which we don't necessarily believe is beneficial with respect to this product.
And then the last item is from page 66, which indicates that facade colors must be selected from a single quadrant of the color wheel, and that the focus should be on yellow to red, the yellow to red quadrant. Can you describe the colors that have been chosen for this project?
Well, depending on the type of color wheel you're referring to, we actually are in a quadrant. It's in the warmer tones. The hues are obviously the grays, dark grays. So we feel we're in a quadrant, but not necessarily in the yellow and orange, which we feel is certainly a dated palette.
And we've added one accent color of blue over the retail. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that was also requested by the TRC.
Moving on from the relief requested and tying into the TRC, there were a number of items that the TRC specifically requested during its meeting on November 13th, which were then tied into the City Council's review on December 9th. And so I'd like to just run through those very briefly, some of which I'm going to defer to Mr. Delaney or Mr. Moran when we move on to landscaping and site engineering, but I'd like to hit the ones that pertain to architecture. So number one, it was requested that we provide a second rendering showing the relationship between the multifamily and the townhomes. I believe you've already showed that. Item number 3 was a question concerning ensuring that there'd be no light spillage from ceiling lights or car lights in the parking garage into the public right-of-way. If you wouldn't mind going back to the exhibit that shows the parking garage and describing what has been done to ensure that there would not be light spillage from the garage onto the public right-of-way.
On this particular exhibit, it shows a typical car, and our retaining wall would be high enough that it would stop any lights from a normal passenger vehicle. As far as the ceiling lights, they would be placed in a manner where it wouldn't spill out onto, outside of the garage. And in the event it did, those particular lights or areas that it did spill out, we would actually provide shields on those lights.
All right. We were also asked to explore making the stoops on the townhomes larger. Can you discuss what efforts were made to look at that issue?
I know the engineer and the landscape architect had looked at that. We could make them larger. They could go up to 6 feet by 8 feet. However, by doing that, it would eliminate the landscape strip between the common sidewalk and the stoop. Therefore, they would butt up against each other, which we felt that was certainly not a good design as far as streetscape. But the reality is people aren't going to entertain on their stoop. They've got a 4th story area that which obviously has better views, which that's where the entertainment would take place in their individual townhomes.
Right. We were also asked to explore rooftop solar. And I know that the applicant did explore it. Can you identify what the applicant did and the outcome of that?
Well, the applicant, ourselves, our electrical consultant, and actually a supplier did review the configuration of the available roof area on the multifamily. And by the time we got all the venting through and the common HVAC equipment on the roof, there wouldn't be enough panels to power just the common corridors. So it was unfortunately, it was dismissed as not being really viable.
Okay. We were asked to consider opportunities for color accents in the building. That is something that you were able to achieve. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those are the blue accents that were incorporated into the retail spaces?
Yes.
All right.
And those actually, yeah, and they're actually the same color as what the accent color on the Ocean Club.
We were also asked to incorporate a roof line to create a shadow line. Is that something that you were able to incorporate into the plans?
Yes, we did. We do have on all the flat roof areas, we actually have a cornice that creates a shadow line.
We were asked to look into the leaders and the downspouts to see if they could be incorporated into the facade design or run internal to the building. Can you describe how you're handling the leaders and downspouts, both for the multifamily and for the townhomes?
On the multifamily, there are no leaders or downspouts exposed on 3rd, 4th, or Kingsley. The roof drains to the courtyard. We're picking up the leaders from the courtyard. They will penetrate the podium, and then they are dispersed out to an underground drainage pipe system. On the townhouse, similar. The 4th level, 4th roof is 4th floor roof is drains to the back to the drive aisle, and there are downspouts, exposed downspouts in that particular case. But then they are connected to a drainage piping system as well.
Great. The next item, we were asked to take a look at the garage grill work to ensure that it would be attractive and help camouflage the ground level garage. We were also asked to explore the potential for a louver system. Can you explain why the grill work, the decorative grill work, was chosen and why the louvers were not feasible?
Well, one, we mimicked the openings with the residential openings above, so we have the same size and pattern. And we went with grill work because we want that to be somewhat open as well, or translucent. But the main reason we didn't look at, well, actually we did look at louvers. The problem with louvers is it reduces the size of the air openings, and these garages are naturally ventilated, and because we're trying to keep this building as green as possible. And as soon as we incorporated louvers, it reduced the air, the amount of air required to categorize the building as a natural ventilated garage, and that would force us to mechanically vent the garage.
We were asked to add more trash cans, benches, and bike racks to the streetscape and to look into bike storage internally. Now, we are going to have our landscape architect specifically talk to the streetscape aspect, but if you could discuss the internal bike storage, please.
Internally, we have a bike storage area strictly for bicycles. I think it's only 12 to 15 bikes. However, we have an additional 60 6x10 storage cages for the residents that they can also, if they feel that they would rather have their bikes in their own storage versus a common storage area, they can place them there. And that's at the lower level of the garage.
And over time, if the building management determines that more resident lockers should be used for common bike storage, they could certainly have the flexibility to do that, correct?
They can certainly convert them, yes.
The 11th item had to do with landscaping, which will be provided in testimony by Mr. Moran. And then, let's see, we need to address how waste will be handled. Now, we will have subsequent testimony about the private hauler, but if you could describe how trash will be handled, internally within the multifamily building and then for the townhomes.
Well, in the multifamily building, because the building is split down the center, we actually have 2 trash locations located in the garage with compactors, and each tower will have trash chutes and recycling containers at each floor. So resident on one side, or let's say on the south side tower of the residential building has the ability to go to any, on his floor to go to a trash chute and a recycling container on that particular floor, and not have to go down several floors, cross over because of the split in the building to one location. And then as far as pickup, that will be determined on the usage, as far as with the private hauler, what the demand will be. Those trash areas also are conditioned as well for smell. On the multifamily,
And then
I'm sorry.
on the townhomes?
Yes, on the townhomes, the trash and recycling containers will be located in their garages and pulled out on a trash day for pickup.
We were asked to list out the elements of green building design. Can you list those out for the board?
Well, I can list out a few. I don't know. We may end up with more, but right now we're looking at high performance glazing. Obviously, Energy Star appliances. All the lighting will be LED on the exterior of the building, and a lot of the internal will be as well. I didn't talk about we will have electric charge stations for cars on the first phase. I believe we're planning on 20 that will be installed in the beginning, but the project will have the ability to have up to 50% of the internal parking to be charged. Low flow plumbing fixtures. We talked about the garage as far as we at this point in time, we do not want to mechanically vent it. We would rather have natural ventilation for obvious reasons. And I believe our stormwater has a infiltration system as well. But I think
We'll have Mr. Delaney speak to that in more detail.
And there may be more but that's all we've identified at this point in time.
Okay. There were 2 other items the TRC asked us to look at, but they both fall under the purview of our site engineer. They have to do with street infrastructure and the parking spaces and curb cuts. So we will get to that when Mr. Delaney comes up to testify. So now I know we're almost through everything, but I did want to go through a few items from the board's professionals reports. And I'd like to start with the report from Insight that I believe was marked as B1, and it's dated May 25th, 2021. There were a few items within that report that required testimony. The first one I have on my list is item number 15, having to do with the question about mechanical equipment. Can you describe, both for the multifamily and for the townhomes, because I know they're a bit different, where the mechanical equipment for HVAC and so forth will be located? Okay.
On the multifamily, on each unit, we are actually using what's called a PTAC unit, which will be under the windows, and we've incorporated the grill work for those units as part of the window design. For the common space, for the amenity areas, common corridors, makeup area in those areas, they will be a split system unit with the condensers located on the roof. And we typically locate those inboard over the common centralized corridor for 2 reasons. One, for sound and vibration on the units, and the fact that they're set back far enough that you will not be able to see the equipment from the street. On the townhouse, they are a split system, that it will be a typical split system unit with the condenser on the roof, on the 4th floor roof. Again, that's similar to what we did at Vive, and I believe if we have to, I believe we have a photograph of Vive that shows or doesn't show the unit that proves you can't see it from the street. So those are the types of systems.
Excellent. That's actually the very last exhibit in this set, if you wanted to put that up, and believe it's marked as A36, but I could be wrong.
Oh, I think this is you have Jennifer's, or is this ours?
Oh, we may not have that one here. We can, if needed.
We can
pull
break it up. Yeah.
Right, it's a picture of Vive. So on
Yeah.
Vive, you're indicating that the condensers there are also located on the rooftop,
Yes,
and that would similarly be done for the townhomes here. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. All right. The next item I had on my list from the Insight report was item 20. Item 20, and we are also going to have Mr. Delaney testify here as to the RSIS standards. But if you could just clarify the number of van accessible spaces that are part of this project.
Well, under the RSIS standards, we're required to have 7 accessible parking stalls. We're only required to have 1 van, but we're showing 2 van spaces on the first floor and 5 car spaces on the second level of the parking structure for a total of 7.
And that meets all state requirements for the number of ADA accessible spaces, correct?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so somebody else is going to go over the specifics about the parking?
Yes, we're going to have Mr. Delaney pull up the parking.
Okay,
The parking, both to show its location, on-site and off-site, and the number of spaces and configuration. All right. Actually, I think the next one on my list is actually number 30A. And describes lighting on the roof decks. There is an optional roof deck proposed on top of the multifamily. For that light, what type of lighting might be used there? Is that a question for you or Mr. Moran?
Yeah, I apologize. I forgot to mention that. There is an optional roof deck, a roof amenity on the, excuse me, the northeast corner, because it would have great views. Lighting up there, typically when we do roof decks like this, typically it's a down light that's attached around the height of the guardrail, which is about 42 inches. Typically, we don't like any lights any higher than that because it obviously obstructs your view. But that's typically what would happen. We wouldn't have any overhead lighting at all.
The remainder of the items in the Insight report, I believe, will be handled by Mr. Delaney or by our landscape architect as we go along. But there was one item. Is there one more?
Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
If I miss one more, let me know.
Well, I think there was one more. It was 38. They were asking about on our garage, the drive aisle width and the parking stall sizes. We have 24-foot drive aisles within the parking structure, which meets the RSIS codes, and the parking stalls are 8 by 19, which also meet the code as well.
Okay. Excellent. All right. And then turning to the T&M report, and this is the report that's already been pre-marked as B2. There's one item in C2 that I'd like you to address, and that had to do with the relief required for the garage doors and just clarification there.
What page are you referring to?
Let's see. It was on the list of required relief, and it was item, I have here C2, but that's not, okay, it is on page 8.
Page 8?
C2 on page 8, correct.
Thank you.
And it indicates that relief would be required for garage doors that would be a maximum of 9 feet wide. But I think the garage doors that may have been referred to are actually the bifold doors, the bifold storefronts. Is that correct?
I'm assuming that's the case.
Did
I'm assuming that's the case because the only other garage door or potential garage door that we have would be the garage door entering the garage itself on the multifamily.
And the bifolds, although we call them garage style doors, they're not garage doors. They don't.
No, they're really
to a place where you park cars.
I guess that's, yeah, lack for a better, but they're basically a commercial in this case, are a commercial bifold glass door.
Right. Those are all the questions that I had for Mr. Simon. Again, we do have 3 other witnesses who will be hitting on different areas, specifically the landscaping, and then site engineering will be talking more about parking and lighting. But those are all the questions I have for Mr. Simon.
All right, I'd like to go to our professionals to see if there are any questions that they have that they feel were not covered by the architect or that they would like to raise.
None here.
All right, Jason. Anything?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no questions here for the architect. Thank you.
Okay. Stan?
Yeah, no questions. He addressed the specific comments that we had on the architectural design.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any board members have any questions?
Yeah, this is Mike. I just further clarification on testimony that was given about the stoops and the townhomes. Just so I'm understanding it correctly. So it sounds like that it may be possible to increase the size of those stoops, but you would actually lose the landscape strip between the stoop and the sidewalk. Is that right? And there would be no fence there either.
That's correct. Currently, we're 6 foot wide and 4.5 feet in depth on the current stoops. We could go to 6 by 8, but again, that eliminates that softscape, that landscaping between the public and those private stoops.
And Jerry, the way they're oriented, that would actually put the wall of the stoop up against
the sidewalk. That's correct. Yeah, it would be a hard. I mean, it would be a hard. I guess a connection, for lack of better. I mean, there's no soft material between the two to give it some separation.
Sure, but it could go somewhere in between 4.5 and 8 feet, right?
It could. I guess I would ask what it would be the reasoning as far as because again, it's not large enough to entertain, and obviously we have the deck on the 4th floor.
If I may, I can tell you because I live in a townhome. Most of the entertaining is truly done on the 1st floor because that's where people pass by. That's where you see your neighbors. When you actually entertain people and invite them to your home, you do go up to the 4th floor. But the 1st floor is where your community is. That's why we're asking.
Yeah.
That's why we're saying.
Right, and that was my point, is it's more of a little bit more of a traditional kind of townhome streetscape design to kind of have the stoop be almost part of the sidewalk network, right? It creates more of a community atmosphere. So yeah, that clarifies. Thank you.
Well, yeah, they certainly could be something in between. You're right.
Yeah.
And somebody else is going to actually show us the layouts, I'm assuming, before we, there's someone else that's going to be presenting the layouts.
When you say the layouts, Chairwoman.
The layouts around the stoop and the front, so we could see what it looks like. And then you have the layout of the 1st floor, so you could see, are we going into a kitchen or are we going into a garage? You know, so it makes more sense that if you have a stoop, that if you're going into a kitchen, then you could bring your drinks, your food, whatever, right out, and you have your breakfast there, you have your lunch there, or whatever, or you have your drinks there with your neighbors. So that's why I'm assuming someone else is going to go through that layout.
If you'd like to talk about floor plans, I think Mr. Simon would be the appropriate person to ask about the floor plans.
Okay, then Mr. Simon didn't go through any floor plans, actually.
If you would like him to go through the floor plans, we could do that. Let me pull up. We have not pre-marked those, but we can pull them up from the website. Let me just pull them up
Hi,
right
this is
now.
Rick. Can I ask a question? I apologize for being late. I was working. And y'all may have gone over this at the beginning. And I know that it's not required in the waterfront redevelopment. I was just curious if there's any affordable housing being provided in the apartment building.
So I can answer that as
I'm sorry.
as the attorney. Remember?
I'm sorry.
I'm
you broke
sorry.
up. I could hear you.
Yeah, Jennifer, you're breaking up a little bit. Is anyone else experiencing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think she's frozen. Okay.
Anyone can answer that question. Doesn't have to necessarily be Jennifer.
I think she wanted to.
I think so. I'll let the attorney, there's a reference in our report specifically that there are no affordable units here, but that it's part of they have a developer agreement with the city with regards to the overall provision of affordable units within that area.
So what is that? Can you?
Why don't we let
translate that?
Jennifer answer the question as opposed to our expert?
We've actually lost Jennifer and she's hopping back on right now. So let's give her a minute.
I apologize, everyone. We have a storm coming through right now and it must be upsetting the internet. Can everyone hear me now or did I freeze again?
No, you're good.
You're good.
All right, well, fingers crossed it doesn't happen again. So the last
Okay.
question I heard was about affordable housing and I can
Yes.
answer. So under the waterfront redevelopment plan, it provides that the affordable housing can be set by the redevelopment agreement. And in this case, it was. It was also set forth in the subsequent development agreement. And so part of that, there are payments that need to be made. This building, if approved, the project over the threshold that another $1 million payment will have to be made to the city for affordable housing. Consideration was given to potentially doing affordable housing. Am I breaking up again?
Yeah.
Yes, you're breaking up again. Jennifer, why don't you try turning your
Okay.
video off? Let's try that. It'll use up less bandwidth.
Okay, let's see if that's better.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, everyone. All right, let me go back and I'm not sure how much that was on the record, so we'll try again. So as far as affordable housing, the redevelopment plan provides that it can be set forth in the redevelopment agreement, which it was. And it provides for a series of payments to be made to the city for the use of housing. That was reaffirmed in the subsequent developer agreement that there will be a series of payments made by this project. And specifically, this project, due to its density, will we anticipate push over the threshold that the next $1 million payment will be due to the city to be used for affordable housing. We did look at potentially having affordable housing in the building and actually sat down with the city's financial advisors to go through the pro forma. But unfortunately, it was concluded that that was not going to be financially possible for this building. But it is something that we did look at, Mr. Lambert. It wasn't something we glossed over. We put serious consideration into it. But at the end of the day, the city is opting to accept the $1 million payment that it can then use for affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Hopefully this thunderstorm passes by quickly so I can come back on you.
Through the chair. Actually, I did have one question with regards to the testimony on the lighting with regards to the glare from the parking deck. My understanding based on the testimony is that there will be a updated or revised lighting plan that will show specifically what are the ceiling lights are going to be shielded to confirm that there will be no glare, correct?
There, eventually we will have a photometrics of the garage in our construction documents. That's correct.
And we will represent that the ceiling lights will be angled down so that there will be no glare, correct?
Yes, and obviously there'll be a field review as well. Any lights that do peak out or happen to, if in some case they do, then those lights will be addressed as far as shielding.
Excellent. Madam Chairwoman, what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling up the planning board application documents. It's just taking one moment. That includes the floor plans. And I can have Mr.
Yes,
Simon.
I'm just mostly concerned about the first floor of the townhomes.
Well,
Unless someone else on the board would like to see others. I'll leave it to the board members if they would like to see others.
While I'm doing that, Madam Secretary, if you could tell me what the last marked exhibit is, because I'm unable to flip back to it. That way, when I pull up this next one, we can mark it as the next exhibit in the sequence.
Sure. Just one moment. Let me pull it up.
it okay if I ask a question as we wait? This is Jen Souter.
Certainly.
Regarding the list of green building high performance items that you went through, you had mentioned Energy Star appliances, and then you went through the HVAC systems for the units. Are those anticipated to be energy efficient systems?
I'm going to have to defer. That's why I said the list is probably going to grow. I'm going to have to defer that to our mechanical engineer. Most likely, we're certainly going to get the most efficient units we can. But I honestly do not have that off the top of my head.
Okay, I'll wait.
And if I would, here's something that's done typically as part of the construction documents. So I think the answer right now is that we don't have those specific fixtures picked out yet.
This is Eric Gallipo, if I may also interject. Are you anticipating seeking any sort of high performance certification like LEED or WELL or sites?
That has not been discussed with the applicant as of yet. That's something I will probably end up going through life cycle cost analysis on different systems.
Okay.
So again, I cannot answer that at this point.
I am going to, if everyone can hear me, I'm going to share my screen because I have the unit plans up.
Great. And Ms. Smith, just to verify, the last exhibit that you have marked as an applicant exhibit is A35. So this will be marked as exhibit A36.
Excellent. And this is from the package that is available on the board's website right now. It's page 126 out of 621 for anyone following along at home. So Mr. Simon, just to make sure I've pulled up the correct plan.
Jennifer, these are the multifamily units. Can you go to the townhomes? Yes.
I will attempt to do that. Okay. I guess those probably fell after. So we will still. The storm is slowing things down tremendously.
Yeah, it would be around A27.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, almost there. Okay. All right, so we'll pull up A27. What's marked as A27 as the architectural plans, which is page 127 out of 621. We will mark this one as A36. So A36 is architectural sheet A.27. Mr. Simon, can you talk about what's up?
Oh, I can actually describe it at this point. It might be easier.
Okay.
Actually, the ground floor of the townhomes actually are. Oh, here we go. We have a central kitchen that bisects basically a living area or a den area, and then eating in the back with a powder room on the ground floor. That's typical for all of the townhomes. Well, actually, that's actually the second floor. The ground floor really is a garage, and then we have a flex room at the bottom, and then you have basically a full flight up to the common area, which we would consider the first floor living, and then bedrooms are on the floor above. So, Madam Chairman, as far as your kitchen's actually on the second floor, so you'd have to grab your coffee, go downstairs, and out to your balcony or out to your stoop, which is certainly possible.
I would like to suggest that we consider something between the 6 foot by 4.5 and the 6 foot by 8, some compromise there, so that people can have a couple of chairs, a small cafe table, or something like that if they choose.
All right, so noted.
Okay.
I would agree with that, Barbara.
Sorry.
I'm not enamored with the fence in front of the stoop either. So
Right,
I
right.
would agree with that.
Right. We'd like something that's more welcoming, so the community can interact with each other.
And this is Jen Souter again. If and also I know we'd be losing that plant material, but or people could also incorporate planters onto that stoop if there's more space.
True.
And a good example of that, just if the architect would like to take a look, or if somebody else on the project would like to take a look, is the Wesley Grove development that has similar features. If they would like to.
Wesley Grove.
Wesley Grove and Asbury Park, yes.
All right.
I have another question about, can you repeat? I know that you mentioned something about bike storage. Can you repeat that? Where is the bike storage?
In the multifamily?
Yeah.
The bike storage is located on the ground floor parking level. There you go.
Okay.
In the upper, yeah,
Pause for a moment.
yes, that area. And then we have 60 6x10 storage cages in that area as well. And again, they can either store their bike in the common area, or they could actually store it within their locker. And if the need arises that there's more requests to have it in a common area and need, a lot of those storage areas could be converted to bike racks.
Yeah, I would suggest that, knowing how many people have their bicycles and they like to have them readily available, as opposed to having to go to a storage unit to go get them, because this is enclosed in the garage, right? So it's secure.
Yes.
Right. So if there's someplace else where you could put some more, you'll notice those kind of things in North Beach. They have numerous places where people put their bike racks inside, and they're always full, as they are in many other buildings. So I would suggest that if there was another place to be able to put a couple of bike racks, that would really be helpful on the interior.
And Madam Chairwoman, the applicant is able to convert those individual cages into more expanded bike space. So if they find that the residents need that bike space, they can convert those units that are right next door,
right,
instead of renting them.
Right, but those residential storage areas are already taken by the people that live there, right?
Well, and so with the bike storage, there's also exterior bike storage, that bike racks that Mr. Moran will discuss for guests and visitors. This is just the interior that would be for the residents. And so there's a common bike storage area for residents, and then also those cages that could be, like, let's say that there's a greater demand for the residents or bike space, they could take some of the cages and convert it where they have multiple people putting bikes into one cage instead of renting a unit to an individual residential owner. Does that make sense?
So with that, let me just clarify that bike storage is for anyone that's in the building. They could put their bikes in there. They don't have to pay. Correct? It's not like
I'm not sure about the economics of it, but I know it's for the residents of the building who would be able to put their bike storage. They would have bike storage there. And if they find that room is overcrowded, then they could convert some of those individual cages into additional bike storage.
One thing I do have an issue with is that potentially charging people to be able to put their bicycles, which we want to encourage people to use, is probably not the way we want to go. That's my suggestion. Okay. We want people to use their bikes.
I will bring that up with the applicant. And we will also be providing testimony concerning the exterior bike racks that are also being included as well. But that will be provided by the landscape architect.
And all the condensers are where? The condensers on the townhomes are in their backyards, front yards? Where are they?
No, the condensers on the townhouses are on the 4th level on the roof.
I'm good then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Barbara, this is Jim. I have a couple of questions also.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure whether these are for Mr. Simon or maybe Ms. Smith might be the one. But in Jason's report, item number 31, could that be addressed now? And I'd also like to ask whether or not, since Ms. Smith brought the issue of the developers agreement up, is there a development agreement that covers any item that is being discussed tonight In other words, has a developer's agreement been made with the city that addresses any of the items that we're going to discuss tonight?
There's a redevelopers agreement, and then there's also a subsequent developer agreement. The subsequent developer agreement is project specific for this project, and it was adopted by the city council and has been signed by the city and by the developer. It covers the entire project. So there are certainly items that are before you. For example, the city council has weighed in as required by the redevelopment plan to allow for 60 of the parking spaces to be off-site, which is something you'll hear more about from Mr. Delaney. That was agreed upon in the subsequent developer agreement, and it is permitted under the waterfront redevelopment plan. I previously mentioned the affordable housing component had already been incorporated into the redevelopment agreement and the subsequent developer agreement. And then one other issue that you will hear from the planner, but that is in the subsequent developer agreement, is that under the waterfront redevelopment plan, there were suggested densities for certain blocks. And the city has confirmed that the density here is permitted as proposed, the 226. And that's in part by allocating some of the density from prior blocks where less density was proposed to make sure that overall that the density of the waterfront doesn't surpass the maximum number of units throughout the waterfront. So that has been incorporated into a developer's agreement. I don't know if there's any other specific areas you had in mind and as to whether they were in a developer's agreement or not, but there has been one executed for this project.
Before you address the item in Jason's report, can I ask you a question? Where in the waterfront redevelopment plan does it indicate that you can transfer the number of dwelling units from one block to another?
So I will have Mr. Hughes answer that, but there is a provision in the plan, and actually, pardon me while I pick it up here. I apologize, it's a little big, so it lives on the floor next to me. But there's a provision in the plan that allocates density per block, but indicates that it is illustrative and that the city is to determine the appropriate densities. And it has done so in accordance with that provision. And so I think it's on page 73. And again, I will have Mr. Hughes at the very end address this more specifically if you want to defer to him, but it is on page 73 of the waterfront redevelopment plan.
Do you want to take some more questions on that issue right now, or would you prefer to wait?
I think I'd like to have Mr. Hughes here so that he can also provide his expert opinion and testimony. I think it will round out the presentation better than just having me answer. So if you don't mind holding those questions for him, I can have him speak to the specific provisions.
Fine. And then, as I say, one more question was an insight report, item number 31.
Correct. My plan down here. This is where I miss having those big tables in the conference room at Town Hall where I can lay everything out in front of me. So item number 31 in the insight report.
Page 7.
Yeah, it deals with the reconstruction of 3rd Avenue.
Yes, so I will be having Mr. Delaney testify as to the infrastructure component report, which involves the infrastructure for 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue. But I will tell you that under the redevelopment agreement, once 50% of the block is developed, that triggers the need for the infrastructure for 3rd Ave and 4th Ave to be completed. And this project is large enough that it's more than 50% of the block. So it will be roughly contemporaneously with this project that the infrastructure on 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue will be required to be put in, if that answers your question.
Just one more thing about that. When you say 3rd and 4th Avenue, what about Berg?
And Berg, I'm sorry, and Berg, but not
Okay.
Kingsley, because Kingsley's actually, and I'm jumping ahead, but Kingsley's already been done. So
Okay.
3rd and Berg, but it will trigger the whole block.
Anything else, Kim?
No, I think that's fine. I'm ready to wait, see what the rest of the testimony is.
I wish I could put everybody up at once, but those things are planned to be discussed.
And does anybody else from the board have any other questions? Before we
This is
move on?
Alexis. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I just had a question on the overall site rendering, which I think in the renumbered exhibits, it's the first page. And you can let me know if I need to wait for later testimony, but it's numbered as the phase A, phase B, phase C, and then numbered green roof or amenities. Number 7 says a screen wall, basically at the back of the Phase 8 multifamily. Can you describe what that is?
I will actually have our landscape architect describe the screen wall, unless Mr. Simon, I'm incorrect, but I think that is within the landscaping.
I'll let him have his day.
Okay.
All right. If for some reason I'm wrong, I'll ask Mr. Simon to come back, but I'm fairly certain Mr. Moran's going to discuss that.
No, that's fine. And then with the phasing, we haven't talked about the timing of that, but it seems obvious that you're doing the mixed use multifamily Phase A. Would it really be that it was 3 phases, or is it likely that you would do Phase B and Phase C simultaneously?
I think B and C, the option is to do it one after the other, because they'll, like you've seen with a lot of the townhome developments, just from a timing perspective, you just start somewhere, right? So you start with one block and then move to the next as they start to be developed and sell. But really, you'll see that it's the subdivision line is there, and we'll have Mr. Delaney testify as to the subdivision between B and C being each their own lot.
Got it. Okay. And then just my final thing was, and it's already been iterated, but there about the stoops, I do think it creates a rather inhospitable street front where you have a greater opportunity. There are things you can't accomplish in the, multifamily because of the garage. But then you go through great efforts to have different kind of materiality and texture in the architecture, but miss the opportunity to have that texture in the street front. And I think in particular, what the chairwoman was speaking to is like, it's not all entertaining or, I always feel it's very Stepford Wives, but like there's a spontaneous interaction that happens at your door front. I imagine you want families here, where do the kids set up their lemonade stand? There are all sorts of things that don't happen kind of in the interiority or kind of in the compound that I think you just want to make sure that you're providing for that urban design, streetscape, and spontaneous interaction.
Understood.
One more question I have for the architect. So I don't think I fully understand that for the mixed use building, the doors out the west side of the building, what their purpose is and access and function. Just a little confused about where they actually connect to the building.
On the west side, those are exit doors from the upper floors. Because the building is split, we had to provide, actually we have to provide 2 extra stairs because of the split of the building. So those actually come down from, you can either leave from the garage or any of the residential floors above for a direct means of egress.
So is there only an elevator there, or there are stairs?
No, those are just exit stairs.
Oh, those are just stairs. Okay.
Yes.
So there would be no entry from those doors.
No, those
necessarily.
Correct. Those are emergency exit only.
Okay. Thank you.
And does anybody else from the board have any other questions?
This is Jen Sauter again. I just had a quick question about drawing the elevations where it's it's probably a dumb question, but 10A and 10B. And then it says elevations options on B. Is that related to the door? Is the option the door we're just talking about, the cafe?
Yes, that's the southeast corner, and that would be the areas where we would have the optional commercial bifold glass doors.
Oh, I see. I was looking at the wrong part of the drawing. I understand. Thank you.
Anybody else?
And I have another question, Barbara, and this is for Ms. Smith again. I think you told me the answer to my question would be found on page 72 of the waterfront redevelopment plan. Page 72 in my copy is a page that is entitled Implementation, and it has no reference to the issue of housing. So
That's page
if you
72.
give me another page,
Sure.
maybe I want the
In
wrong
my version-
document.
In that one, implementation is not, doesn't have a page number on it. So why don't we have Mr. Hughes give the page number? Because maybe I'm giving you the wrong one, but I will have Mr. Hughes give you the correct page number when he comes up to testify, because I think
Fine. Thanks.
my implementation page actually doesn't have a page number. So
Is it the one behind the implementation page?
Dwelling unit distributions.
sorry, I'm flipping through here. Okay. Hold on. It's the one, there's a whole chart, and I don't want to hold everybody up, but I will have.
That's your convenience. Go ahead.
I will have Mr. Hughes. I don't want to hold everything up as I flip through here, but there's a page that has a chart with the relative densities on it. And so if I have the wrong page number, I apologize. But we will get that page number for you, and I'll have Mr. Hughes specifically go through that when it is his turn.
Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Jen.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The note about the green roof optional, is that something the landscape architect will talk about? Where it says green roof optional? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Is that a no? I guess that's a no. Okay, we're ready to open. Any other questions from the city? I mean, from the professionals, just so that in case we have to circle back for something, are we okay?
I'm good here.
All right.
Yeah, no questions from me. And I believe
Okay.
that chart's on page 73 of the redevelopment plan.
Thank you.
All right. All right, let's open for public question at this point, having to do with anything that the architect testified to. Irina?
Thank you. And if anyone in the public would like to ask a question of the architect and his testimony, please use the raise hand button on your screen, or if you're on a telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand. And at the time being, I show one hand raised, phone number ending in 350. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Just to identify himself.
Oh, yeah, Ernest McNally, 710 Northeast 7th Street, Boynton Beach, Florida. I'd like to ask the architect.
Hold on, I apologize to the speaker, Mr. Mignoli. Did I hear that you are residing in Boynton Beach, Florida? Was that correct?
That's correct.
Do you currently own any property within the city of Asbury Park?
No.
Do you currently rent any property in the city of Asbury Park?
No.
Do you?
Well, I rent a storage area, and then I rent a home in West Longbourn. And I just sold my home in Asbury after 15 years. I'm looking for another place.
Are you under contract to buy any property in Asbury Park?
No, I'm down here. I can't come up yet. I want to come up and shop.
So under the municipal land use law, and Mr. Serpico, I'm just putting this on the record to object, but under the municipal land use law, the right of cross-examination of witnesses is limited to interested parties. And to be an interested party, you have to have a right to use, acquire, or enjoy property that is or may be affected by action taken by this board on the application. And courts have looked at that to say that you need to have a property interest in the town or within the vicinity of this property at block 4001. And Boynton Beach, Florida is not near the property in question. And therefore, although I understand Mr. Mignoli, has previously lived in town, he does not currently have any property to use, acquire, or enjoy that would be impacted by any decision the board made regarding this application. Therefore, he is not an interested party under Section 10 of the Municipal Land Use Law or Section 4 of the Municipal Land Use Law, and should not be permitted to cross-examine any witnesses.
I can respond to that, Madam Chairwoman.
Please do.
Yeah, I've read the cases. I understand the memo. And this is an area of law that is not fully settled at this point. There are another line of cases that indicate that the standard for interested parties is very, quote, very liberal in the state of New Jersey. That being said, my opinion is that we should continue and allow Mr. Mignoli to ask his questions with the understanding that I could make a recommendation to the board either way based on what I see, because the law, to me, is not perfectly clear in either direction. There are cases that would agree with Ms. Smith's position, and then there are some other cases that may not, that talk about this liberal standard of parties in interest pursuant to the land use law. However, that being said, understanding the potential for litigation, I do not want to, at this point, push the file into an appeal situation based on deprivation of rights for cross-examination and the like. But I also am mindful of the fact that Mr. Mignoli has represented that he has said on a number of occasions over the last several months that it's his intention to reestablish residency. It's at one point, I believe he was indicating he was looking at something that was owned by one of the doctors, Vaccaro, in the city, and that it would be my expectation that at some point in the future, he will return in some way, shape, or form with a vested property interest within the city of Asbury Park. So based on that, it's my recommendation that we proceed, allow Mr. Mignoli to ask his questions. However, I want Mr. Mignoli to understand something. He and I have had many a discussion for many, many applications, and I have advised him on dozens and dozens of occasions not to characterize testimony, not to place a question which in actuality is direct testimony, and not to answer or ask the same question over and over again, and certainly ask relevant, direct questions. So that's going to be the case tonight. Mr. Mignoli, in my opinion, you can proceed unless the board decides otherwise, but be forewarned that we're going to comply with the way that I would expect you to ask these questions, which are direct to the point. As long as you ask a relevant, direct question, I will not stand in your way whatsoever, ever. You have to work within our guidelines, or I will mute you and move on.
Okay, I'm on. Can I ask questions? You
Madam
want me to
Chair?
re-identify myself?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, Ernest George Mignoli, 710 Northeast 7th Street, Boynton Beach, Florida. So I had a question for the architect. You said that there'll be 249 parking spaces on the property, and 60 spaces will be in the iStar, I guess, community family of buildings across the street in the Ocean Club in the underground parking, correct? 60?
Correct.
We're going to have Mr. Delaney identify those spaces and provide additional testimony.
I don't know. What does that mean? Someone else will answer?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you testified that at certain places there'll be 6 stories with rooftop, correct?
You're characterizing his testimony again.
No, I'm asking, will they be?
Ask him a direct. Did you or did you not say this?
Did you or did you not say that certain places there would be 6 stories with some rooftop amenities?
The multifamily will have 2 portions that are 6 stories with an optional roof amenity on the northeast corner.
Okay. I guess it's your testimony that the property is across.
Are you? I object to the character.
You can't do that. You can't say is testimony. You got to ask them your question. You're going around and around a roundabout way to get to where you want to be. Ask.
Okay. Is this property directly to the west of the Ocean Club?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is it your testimony that the 6 stories with a roof amenity might block some of the western view of the Ocean Club units?
No, it's not his testimony. He never said anything about that.
Well, he said it's 6 stories.
But you're going on. You're going on.
Okay, all right, let's move along.
No, answer. Well, I'll say when we're going to move on. You said that he testified that it's going to block the view. He never said anything about views or being blocked. Not a word. That's you testifying. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Ask the questions based on the testimony that was given. Don't try to interject something that wasn't said. Please proceed.
Okay, so I'll withdraw my question about that. It looks like a total of, you said a total of 249 plus 60. That's over 300 spaces. Does the city require you to relate the amount of parking to the amount of bedrooms I think you testified there were.
All right, go ahead. What's the basic
We've already indicated that we will have another individual testify as to the parking requirements for this project.
Okay. Okay, I get. Who was that? The engineer?
That will be Mr. Delaney. Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Magnoli, if I may interrupt for a second, you have to turn off one of your microphones or one of your devices because we're getting feedback.
Okay, are you still getting it?
I think that's good.
Okay, I hope that's better. I think, did you testify about the amount of coverage of the land with permeable and unpermeable?
No.
He did not.
Okay, no, okay. Did you make any testimony about water runoff?
No, he did not.
Okay, all right, thank you. You testified that the air conditioning units will be on the roof. Could you tell me about approximately how many rooftop cooling units will be on the top of these buildings? Like 300?
Which building are you referring to?
On all of them. I think you said there's about 250 units. So I'm going to assume, I think you said all of the...
No.
Okay. Is all the air conditioning going to be on the roof?
No.
No. Okay. Well, where is some of it going to be?
I testified that the units for the HVAC units for the residential on the multifamily will be what we call PTAC units located under the window at each unit. And they're internal to the unit. They're self-contained.
Okay. And I think relative to the stoop that you're talking about, so the property is going to be pretty close to Kingsley sidewalk.
I don't think that Mr. Simon testified about stoops on Kingsley.
Or something about a fence, and that when people come in, what are you talking about on Kingsley? Some of them their fronts are going to be on Kingsley near the sidewalk?
No, I didn't testify to that.
Okay. All right. Will the stores be there? The stores with the opening windows and stuff?
There is retail along Kingsley to activate Kingsley Street.
Okay. You testified that you could have as much as 50% over 100 electric car charging. Do you have enough electric there, to supply it?
We have spoken to our engineers and have planned that in the future, if needed, and the applicant desired it, we could power up to 50% of the parking stalls within the multifamily for electric charging.
So you're testifying that you can get the power you need from Central Jersey at that location between 3rd, 4th, Kingsley and correct?
That's something that our electrical engineer and the civil engineer will work with those utility companies. I have not had conversations with them at this point.
Okay. All right. So they didn't give you a yes or no yet, but you're in the process of checking it out.
No, that's not what he said.
So I think here is my last questions about the street and parking. So if you look at Kingsley, 3rd, 4th, et cetera, the way it is now, will any of the streets lose, like for driveway cuts or for, I don't know, handicap or anything? Or how are the four?
That's outside the scope of his testimony.
Correct.
You didn't testify to that. That's outside.
Oh, you didn't testify to that? Okay.
No.
All right, I'm done. Is there going to be a...
Thank you, Mr. Magnoli. And next person with their hand raised is caller with phone number ending in 124. Please identify yourself and ask your question of the architect's testimony.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Rita Moreno, 504 8th Avenue, previous owner of that property. I don't know, it's been such a hostile meeting with the other man that I'm afraid to ask a question, but I will. I used to have a double sidewalk. I don't know how to explain it any other way. is the building going to start where the other building was? Or is it going to be further up? Actually, it was a double sidewalk. So, is it going to be on public property, right to the sidewalk, or is it going to be back where the other buildings were?
I'm going to acquiesce to the engineer on that question, if you don't mind.
Okay. That was my only question, and it's such a big project. I know I can't comment, but this is such a big project that you really should have models so that that board could see exactly how everything looks. It's very difficult this way to look at an artist rendering, and it's just, it's not right. This project is very big, 4 square blocks.
We're going into testimony.
Okay, I finished. Don't holler, Jack.
Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Morano. And at the moment, I don't show any other people with their hand raised. Please continue.
Your next witness?
Yes, I would like to call Mr. Moran, who is our landscape architect.
I can't see the gentleman, so I don't know.
There we go.
Right here, Mr. Moran,
Oh.
Jared Moran. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Please raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear that the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Please state your name for the record, spell it, and give us your affiliation with the applicant, and Ms. Smith will ask you some questions.
Sure. My name is Jared Moran. That's JARYDMORAN. And I'm a licensed landscape architect and project manager at Bowman. And I am the landscape architect for this project on block 4001.
Jennifer, your witness.
Sure. Mr. Moran, if you could just summarize your experience in the field of landscape architecture, and then I will offer you as an expert in the field.
Sure. I have 19 years experience working with Bowman. Like I said, I'm a licensed landscape architect in New Jersey. I graduated from Rutgers University Cook College in 2002 with a degree in environmental planning and design. And I've been licensed in the state of New Jersey since 2010, and my license is in good standing.
Thank you. And Madam Chairwoman, I would like to offer Mr. Moran as an expert in the field of landscaped architecture.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moran, I'd like to go to what we have pre-marked as Exhibit A23. And I believe you're going to pull that up. There we go. On the screen.
We got this A23, right, which is the overall site rendering. And I would just like to start off by letting everyone know that, a lot of effort and thought has went into this project from a landscape perspective. We met early on in the project with the developer and visited similar projects in the area in Asbury Park to observe the hardscape and the planting materials in order to see which materials have proven to be successful. So, with this initial research, along with the experience of the developer in this area, we feel that this will enhance the success and the outcome of this project from a landscape perspective. So just wanted to let everyone be aware of that. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the streetscape aspect. I will then move on to the base of the building, right? And then I'll talk a little bit about the amenity space at the townhomes, this courtyard, and then I'll move on to the amenity space at the multifamily building. All right, so you could see right here, this is the right-of-way line right at the edge of the sidewalk. All right, and I just want to point out that everything within the right-of-way, on our plans has been in coordination with the infrastructure component report. And we're showing that basically as a courtesy, but that will be installed by the master developer. All right. So I'll walk through the improvements though that exist within the right of way. The street trees, as you see here, have been proposed per the waterfront redevelopment plan, right, species wise. And we have London plane trees on 3rd Ave and 4th Ave. Berg Street, we have proposed Zelkova trees Kingsley, there are existing honey locust trees that are proposed to remain. All right, the locations of these have been, like I said, in coordination with the infrastructure component report, all of the locations of the trees.
And just to pause there for a moment, under the infrastructure component report, the street tree plans, as far as the spacing and the locations, that will all be submitted to the city engineer for approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. Regarding, still within the right of way, the hardscape and the street fixtures will be consistent with the city standards. As we discussed earlier on, the street furnishings, I'll go over. We have a total of 11 bike racks, 8 benches, and 4 trash receptacles. So from the TRC meeting, it was requested that we add trash receptacles and benches, and we've done so. 1 bench up here, trash receptacle here, bench, trash receptacle. All along Kingsley, this is existing. Like we talked about before, the trees are existing, the lights are existing, the site furnishings are existing as well. So we have a group of bench, bike rack, trash receptacle, same down here on this corner. All right, we've added 2 groups of benches outside of the right of way, but still existing, more or less on the streetscape component. Down here is a group of 2, and up here is a group of 2. So in total, that is 11 bike racks, 8 benches, and 4 trash receptacles. I know just because we were talking about the bike racks before, this is a group of 8 bike racks right here, 1 existing bike rack, 2 existing bike rack. This is the second existing bike rack. And then we added another one here. So that's 11 bike racks. Each of these bike racks are capable of holding 2 bikes. All right. So the northeastern corner of the building and the southeastern corner, both of these spaces outside of the right of way provide opportunities for outdoor dining consistent of tables and chairs and movable planters, which will allow for seasonal display of plant material. Okay, moving on to the base of the building. Northern building facade of the multifamily building, we're proposing an alternating group of ornamental grasses and a low evergreen hedge at the northern and the southern facade of the building. The evergreen hedge is going to be installed in a low planter wall, as you can see by this white outline, and that exists on the north, south, and the eastern side of the building. As was brought up before, the screen wall. This will be a masonry screen wall. The finish will be a stucco finish in coordination with the building facade on this side, so similar color to match the building materials. This, like I said, it's a masonry screen wall, and it'll house and screen the utility meters located back here. All right. For the townhome portion, all right, we're showing a mix of evergreen and ornamental grasses behind a 3-foot decorative fence. Right, it exists on both sides. All along the western property line, we're proposing a 6-foot cedar fence for privacy. Just like to point out that this 3-foot fence turns the corner and will transition from 3-foot to 6-foot fence right at the building edge, and that exists on both property, both 3rd and 4th Ave. All right, so moving on to the courtyard space between the townhomes. We split this up into 2 seating areas, essentially. This seating area on the western portion is more of a lounge seating type for one group, and the seating area under these 4 trees will be tables and chairs and 2 optional natural gas grills on the eastern edge of that property. Plant material wise, we're specifying a mixture of native plants supplemented with plants that do well in a seaside environment. such as hydrangeas, junipers, and fountain grass. The one thing I failed to mention was the screening of the utilities from the street, right? So we're showing evergreen trees, right? That will provide the necessary screening, and these do adhere to the utility company's screening requirements. All right, and that exists on for both of the utilities. We have the screening there. Moving on to the amenity plaza at the multifamily building, we have a pool area, right, which is enclosed by a pool compliant fence. This whole area is 2.5 feet above the finished floor of the third floor. They'll have chase lounges, optional daybed seating, as well as some group seating on this synthetic turf lawn panel adjacent to the pool. There'll be wood decking and unit pavers consistent of concrete unit pavers. We're proposing multiple lounge seating areas, as you can see here. We're proposing 2 dining and grilling areas, one being over here and another over here as well. We're proposing plant material that will buffer the private residential patios that front on this amenity space. So overall, the design, I mean, this design contemplates multiple groups being able to use the space at the same time and have their own sense of separation and privacy by breaking the space up into all these little smaller areas. Right, so moving on to Exhibit A24. This is marked A24, pre-marked A24, courtyard perspective at townhomes. The TRC had asked us to provide perspectives of both the courtyard and the amenity space. So this is the model that we prepared. Keep in mind, this is a representative example of what may be out there, upon construction, but this is in coordination with our plans right now. You can see the one seating area in the back. We got the central seating area with the tables and chairs under the canopy of the tree, and the optional natural gas grills will go down here in this area. We have a railing that would match the 3-foot high rail from the remainder of the project down here. And on this side, we have, you can't see it, but there's a 6-foot high cedar fence behind this vegetation, which provides a little bit of a buffer. Next exhibit we'll be looking at is the amenity deck perspective, marked as A25. And once again, the TRC had asked us to provide a detailed rendering of this space, so this is what we have prepared. Again, this is a representative example of what may be the outcome. You can see the pool area up here. It's elevated approximately 2.5 feet above the finished grade, like we said before. A synthetic turf material, as you can see down here, the wood decking and the concrete pavers. Lounge seating areas with an optional fire feature. It's going to be, it's optional, but we're still determining some sort of fire feature down this area, and the 2 grilling areas. The last exhibit that I wanted to go over was marked A26. And this slide illustrates the proposed lighting. This is within the amenity deck, within the multifamily building. I just wanted to give you an example of what we were proposing. So in the pool area, we're proposing pedestrian scale mounted light fixtures, 12 feet high, light bollards as well. And the remainder is miscellaneous low voltage accent lighting that may be on the pergola post, up lighting for some trees, some small accent lighting for the grills and whatnot. But all of the lighting will be LED. All right, so that concludes my presentation.
Right? Okay, so remaining questions then.
Go ahead.
I was going to turn to the letter from TNM. So for TNM in section 8 of that letter, which was marked as B2, there were some questions related to landscaping. So several of the questions related to the streetscape and the trees that would be planted within the city's right-of-way. Can you confirm that those trees will be planted in accordance with the infrastructure component report at the spacing that's required by the city and the city's engineer?
That's correct. Yeah, what we're showing on our plans and within this rendering is all in coordination with the infrastructure component report. So majority of those comments would be that's what the response would be, that it's in coordination with the infrastructure component report. That's right.
Okay. And so we're not seeking relief from the redevelopment plan for those items. Instead, those items are controlled by the city council when it comes to the locations of the trees and the manner in which the street trees outside of the property line would be planted, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so item 8D then I'd like to turn to. It mentions that there are several utilities between the proposed mixed-use building and the townhome requiring screening. And there was a question about an update to provide a planting or a structural screen. So can you just discuss those utilities between the mixed-use building and the townhomes again to address that item?
Sure. That's right here. We're showing pads for some equipment as well as the metering. And we feel that these plants right here are substantially larger evergreen. They're small evergreen trees, that will provide sufficient screening from the street view down here. And that exists on both sides.
Right. And then it looks to me like all of the other items are technical items which the applicant agrees to comply with, except for item K, where it requested additional testimony. So there's a question about the rooftop amenities and providing testimony. So if you could discuss the rooftop amenity area.
Sure, that's over here, and Jerry had spoken to that a little bit earlier. But as he mentioned, this entire area over here is optional, right? And if the developer does choose to install this, it would be, similar to what we're showing here, multiple lounge seating areas, some tables and chairs, and that's mainly it. It's not a large space, so it would mainly be a few lounge type seating areas.
All right. And then if we could turn to the insight letter on item 21, and this actually relates to a question that I believe was asked earlier as well, concerning the amount of impervious coverage on the site. Can you discuss that issue?
Sure. The number 21 references the tree and shrub percentage, which is 5% tree and 5% shrub. We would be required within our site, we would be required 11,350 square foot with that would be 10%. And within our property, we have a total of 11,652 square feet combined between the trees and the shrubs. Now the trees are a little lighter than the 5%, and the shrubs are a little greater. That is all within our property. If we go outside of our property to the right of way, we more than meet the requirements. And it is my understanding that this is a waterfront district area requirement, not specifically related to our site.
So within our site, we have less than 90% impervious coverage, even within our site itself. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But that under the waterfront redevelopment plan, we could be permitted to have 100% impervious coverage because of the other open space areas within the waterfront. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then item 22 of the insight report asks that you confirm that landscaping complies with section 3.6 of the waterfront redevelopment plan. With the exception of the items that are outside the property and within the right of way, do Have you reviewed section 3.6 and does all of the proposed landscaping within the property comply with section 3.6 of the waterfront redevelopment plan?
Yes, it does. And with the some additional comments from the T&M review letter, which we will be complying with once we correct those, it will be in compliance. Yes.
I think just to address one question that was already asked, but we deferred to you, and that is the optional green roofs. If you could describe those, I believe Ms. Souter asked a question about that.
Yeah, those are illustrated with this hatch here. And again, those are optional, right? But if the developer chooses to go through that, we're just contemplating a very basic sedum type roof.
And that's the area where the building dips down between being 6 stories high and 3 stories, correct?
That's like cut through on the building, right?
All right. And the cost of that measure will be determined during the final construction planning, is that correct?
That's right.
Those are all the questions that I had for Mr. Moran.
The board have any questions that they'd like to ask?
It's more. I've got a couple. Can you hear
Go ahead.
me?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with, go to number 7 on the slide, please, where the masonry wall is.
Okay. It's right here.
Okay, to the top and bottom of the masonry wall to the west, those are 2 large paths for what?
That I would defer to the civil engineer and can discuss exactly what those are for.
Okay, the masonry screen wall, it's to, for lack of better words, I apologize for you, to hide the meters. Can we get a rendering or a picture of this? Because I've seen some projects passed in the years ago where they didn't get that, and all of a sudden, like, it was like, ooh, how the hell are those meters so ugly? So, you know, is it, as much as you gave a rendering for some of the TRC asked, can we get a rendering of how the meters are actually going to be hidden?
Mayor, if I may just ask a follow-up question to that. Those meters are facing internal to the site. Is that correct, Mr. Moran?
Yeah, and again, Sean Delaney, civil engineer, could confirm that, but my understanding is that there will be meters on this wall, but then there will also be meters on this masonry enclosure itself, right? But it's going to be, it's 8 feet tall, right? So it's an 8 foot tall masonry structure. So it's going to be a smooth finish that matches the building, right? So when you're looking from this angle over here, first of all, you're going to have some pretty, small evergreen trees, but they will be large, right, to kind of soften that screen wall. But what you do see will be, more or less an extension of the building.
Right. So the meters will be exposed to anybody who's coming out those 2 fire exits coming out going west. So it'll be one long row of like 200 meters.
Right.
It will be seen by somebody.
Well, this wall will return and the meters will be set back in here, as well as along this wall. So, I think Jerry had mentioned this before. These are emergency exit doors. So in the event of an emergency, yeah, people will see them, but the residents that are walking through here, will screen as best as possible the meters that are directly behind this 8 foot wall, and that wall itself will be screening the meters on the actual building itself.
Okay. Excuse me. You said when you were talking about the rooftop amenities, not the corner, but the entire rooftop, you said this is representative of what it might look like. I don't think we need something that's representative of what it might look like. I think we need something definitive of what it's going to look like. I mean, because we could approve something representative and then say, who the heck approved that? So, I mean, is it or isn't it? You use the word representative. Is what it's going to look like, or what's the story?
So just, Mayor, for the record, we're talking about the courtyard that's inside the multifamily building located on the
Correct.
Third floor of the multifamily building?
It's right here.
That one, okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
So,
go ahead, Mr. Moran, I'm sorry.
yeah, it's so we work with the 3D software, and it has specific material. So we get it as best as we can. All the forms, right, all the shapes and whatnot are accurate to the plans that we have on there, but some of the materials may not be shown exactly the way it's so it's a very minor detail. I'll give you an example for this decking here. It appears that it's a full plank decking, right? And most likely it's going to be square decking pavers, which will appear that way. But to get that detail in a rendering like this, it's a lot of work. So this is giving you a very, very, very close idea of what it's going to look like. I just, try to point that out, that this is software and we can only do so much with it.
Okay, go to, please, the northeast corner of the amenities on the top.
Right here.
No, I think the mayor
No,
means
no, no.
more
Nope.
amenities.
Northeast corner of the building. Number 5.
The sixth
Number
floor.
5.
This one right here. Yeah.
Top
Okay.
right.
Okay, right here. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, you said this is something that could be done, and you said it'd be something similar. But again, we're going to need more information. Is it going to be a bar? Is it going to be live music? I mean, is it going to be rooftop music? I mean, we just can't approve something sight unseen, fact unknown, and say, okay, build it in the future without knowing what it is. So using the words, it's going to be representative or similar to me just doesn't again, I apologize. I think, overall it's a nice plan, but I think we need a little bit more.
So, Mr. Moran, if you could clarify what you
definite details. Again, is there a plan to put a rooftop bar there? Is there a plan for rooftop music? I mean, we've got to know this before we can okay a final plan.
understood, Mayor. Mr. Moran, if you could describe what you mean by saying, if you can expand upon your testimony as to that area.
Sure. It's represented this entire space as optional, and that will come down to the construction costs of the project. Right. So
it's possible, Mr. Mayor, that area in the corner on the 6th floor may not be constructed at all. That would just be roof and not be accessible to the residents at all. But if it's constructed, Mr. Moran, this is generally the configuration of where it would be on the rooftop, right?
Correct.
And what would that area be used for by the residents if it's constructed?
Like I said before, just a space to gather and get some nice views of the surrounding area. Provides multiple seating areas for different groups of people to go out there and enjoy.
And this is not intended to be an extension of the retail space, correct? So this is not a bar.
No.
No, well, I apologize. The 3 seats and a long bar and a sink behind it looks like a bar to me, right there in the middle, towards the bottom right there. Yeah, that looks like a bar to me. So if it's going to be a rooftop bar and you're going to have rooftop music, you have to tell us now. It can't be something, it's optional, and we may add it later.
Sure.
And Mr. Mayor, I would clarify, it's not intended to be a bar as far as like a open to the public bar. This is not a live music.
I understand.
If you're asking that we stipulate that there wouldn't be live music up there, I can ask the applicant.
If I may, let's cut to the chase.
Mhm.
If you want the option to construct this, you're going to have to give the board the details and the intended use of it.
Right, and I apologize. I think that's what we're trying to do, that the intended use is for the residents to gather and to have seating as shown on the plan here, that there's tables and chairs and soft seating areas for the residents to sit. But I'm clarifying that this is not intended to be a public bar. It's not intended to be a place you would gather for live music.
How about if the residents decide to have a party up there with alcohol and a live band? Is that part of the use?
I can clarify that with the applicant, whether that would be permitted under the building rules. So I will get an answer to that specific question.
Yeah, I think that's where the mayor's heading. He doesn't want to approve something and then later find out that we approved something that we didn't realize was going to be up there.
Up there. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay. That's simple.
Thank you. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Does anybody else from the board have any other questions?
Yep, I have one question for the landscape architect. On the north and south sides of the building that kind of wrap around the corner as well, you said those were going to be evergreens, correct?
Right against the building, we have a mixture of some ornamental grasses, and then this right here, number 3, these would be a low evergreen hedge. That's what I
Yeah, how tall would they probably grow? My concern is the kind of blank wall aspect of the garage as you move further west. I sort of am of the opinion that maybe taller would be better to kind of soften that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We currently have a low planter wall, and these evergreen shrubs would get anywhere between like 3 to 4 feet tall. All right, so you know, we have the street trees out here, which will help with the scale of the building. I think like you're talking about. You can't really get anything that tall within this proximity to the building to help with the scale, where I think you're going with, and it does provide at least a pedestrian level when somebody's walking down here, down the walkway. It's a pedestrian scale.
Yeah, I guess I'm more concerned about the back corners. You know, the where it meets the west. Yeah, kind of in there. Like maybe if we could just, if it's possible, just add some taller evergreens there to kind of, because those corners are the tallest part of the garage blank wall, if you will.
Yeah, we can look into it. We do have some taller plant material, but we are, you know, limited on the space in between the
Yeah,
wall.
understood. Okay.
We'll take a look at it.
Hi, this is Jen Souter. I have a couple of questions. One, sorry about my dog barking. One, just to follow up, I mean, I agree with what Mike just mentioned, that anything we can do to mitigate that blank wall feel. I see that there's been an effort to do that, but I feel like, you know, anyway, many times you come across that feeling of when you're walking along the avenue and you have that blank, it just really takes away from the pedestrian experience to have that garage wall. So I think some taller plants could help. I just the L1, the overall site rendering that you have here, is that that's just L1 rendered, basically? Do we have that?
We don't have, but essentially, yes, it's L1 rendered.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I was flipping around all over the place. We don't have an elevation along Berg, right?
I do not believe we do. Yeah.
No, and just for clarification, the building on Berg is an existing building that will remain.
Right. So so Berg is there, and then if you're looking, so the wall, the 6-foot fence is just to your right there, correct? To provide privacy, and I know it's on the plan, but that runs. Can you just show with your cursor there the extent of it?
Yeah, that's from right here, like at the edge of this building, right? And it goes from the edge of that building all the way down to the edge of this building. So that's a 6-foot fence, privacy fence.
Okay. In between the other the existing property, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, and that's parking from the cars that show there shadowed are the parking from the other property.
Right, this is the existing property.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. Then the green roof, again, to the optional question. So when you say optional, I mean, I realize it's shown, you know, as a possible thing that the developer can do. I mean, we know, I mean, often those things get value engineered out when they're shown. So I'm wondering, is there like a real intention of doing that? I mean, I'm just trying to understand why it's there shown as an optional. If you could just explain, like something that is desired but might be value engineered out, basically.
Right. This comes down to the construction cost, exactly it. And, you know, everybody sees it as a good thing, but it just depends on the construction costs and if it fits in. So
you said you could get cocoa.
Well, I'm guessing that it does fit in because it's there and it looks good.
Construct cost-wise, that is what I'm talking about. So that's the main driver.
All right, thanks.
Right, and it just feels like with something like that, I mean, it's going to get taken out, I imagine. When the only thing you're looking at is cost, then obviously it'll cost somewhat more to add a green roof than to not. So I just question whether it's really intended to happen or it's just in there as a, it's a small area considering the whole site, but it does seem like something that, particularly just with the views around it, and anyway, it seems like a good thing to have in there, and would like to see it stay.
I think the applicant agrees with you that they would like to do it. They really would. But it's one of those things that as the building is spec'd out for cost, that, they see it as an amenity, they'd like to do it. But what they don't want to have is a situation where they, have to come back to the board for an amended approval if they can't. And, one of the biggest variables right now is lumber and the cost of construction, which has really put this project in a precarious position. So we're doing the best we can to be honest about areas where we'd really like to see improvements, but where, at the end of the day, if the costs come back much higher than anticipated with the building, we want to be honest about things that are optional, like the 6th floor rooftop deck as well.
Just for some more clarity, is that there is so much in this lot where today it's impervious and this lot will become pervious mostly, and having something like the green roof is a step in the right direction to show that, we're trying to be a good neighbor and good to the environment. It would really, we strongly suggest that this remain.
Understood.
Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to question?
Yeah, Jim has a couple of questions, Barbara.
Go ahead, Jim.
Can we go to the last 2 pages of the bunch of documents? They're from Bowman Engineering, and they're minor subdivision and preliminary and final site plans for block 4001. You brought them up a few minutes ago. One is the interior courtyard of the townhouses, and the other one is the interior of the one you have right up on the screen.
I think it's the
Can you
rendering.
pull up those 2? Yes, 2 renderings.
Okay.
Pull them up one at a time, if you would, please.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question on this one. You see the stairs? Where do they lead to?
These stairs are located right here. So the stairs.
Yeah.
lead to the sidewalk.
Go back to the rendering you just had up there. Show the stairs, please.
Right here.
Okay. After you go up the stairs, where do you go? You walk into a wall.
There'd be a gate. This is a 3-foot high decorative fence that will be in
Okay,
coordination with the rest
so
of the
you
house.
walk up the stairs. You walk up the stairs, you're gonna jump the fence?
This is the gate. It's closed right now.
Oh, okay. No indication of that. All right. So that's a gate that's openable by anybody going up the stairs.
That I'm not too sure. I would imagine it would be a key fob to enter.
If we could have at some point someone that it's clear that it is, as opposed to imagining, I would rather have someone state what it really is, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just to clarify the record, it is a gate. The only question is whether it will be able to be unlocked by a key fob or whether it would be able to just be pushed open. Is that
right? Right. But if it's pushed open by the public, anyone walking by.
In that rendering, we have no idea. It looks like a wall to me.
Mhm.
Okay. Going on to the next rendering, the one below that in my packet.
Okay, just to clarify, there will be no public, and it will be by key fob. Just to clarify.
And I'm sorry, and it's only 3 feet? I think a lot of people could jump over that. Just saying. If
No.
that's the case.
Yeah. And someone could jump
Okay,
over
this-
4 foot, yeah, or 5 foot.
Well, What is it, 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot?
The fence is.
We need to know that, I
proposed to be a
think.
3-foot high fence. I was just referencing that, any fence is scalable.
We would need to know in the future, we would need to know how high is that gate going to be, so people cannot just
3 foot
jump
high.
over it.
The
3
fence is
foot?
3 foot high, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just be sure, just so you know, I'm gonna be asking it for it to be higher. Let's move on.
Okay, the rendering you have up there, now that sits up on top of what, the 3rd floor?
Correct.
Okay, so this in effect then is the 4th floor of that building, right?
This is the 3rd floor. So
Well, you just told me it just sits on top of the 3rd floor.
no, it's at the elevation of the 3rd floor. There's the parking garage. This would be the 3rd floor.
So this is then below the facade that is visible from Kingsley?
That's correct. That's this over here. Right,
No.
Kingsley would be this direction.
Kingsley is the street between this and this building and the Ocean Club.
Yeah, that's over here on this right side
Correct.
of the drawing. Yeah.
It's on the east side of the drawing, yeah.
Yep.
So you can't see the, I'm sorry, let me ask the question a different way. The facade on the east of this pool area is actually a story higher than this?
If you're standing on Kingsley, would you be able to see the amenity deck? Is that what you're asking?
Well, what I'm trying to establish is from the renderings that you've shown earlier, there is a 3-story facade between 2 6-story towers as you're looking west from Kingsley. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, this is 2 stories here from the amenity deck. So you won't be able to see outside of the amenity deck or inside from Kingsley.
Okay, so you're saying that this is below the 3rd-story level of the facade on Kingsley.
This is below that cutout between the building, which is right here. This is where that optional green would be.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to find out.
Below that, yeah.
Okay, and one of the stated goals of the redevelopment plan was for pedestrian circulation through the middle of the block. And you go back to the rendering that you had up there, that's this one, and you look at the sidewalk areas going in, you've cut out the walkthrough between the east and west portions of that block.
And Mr. Henry, I can have Mr. Hughes address that. There was an amendment to the redevelopment plan in 2018 that actually eliminated that requirement to have the cut through mews with interior to the block.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong plan again.
No, well, it's not the wrong plan. It's just, it was a subsequent amendment that was adopted in 2018.
If the amendment changes it, and I'm looking at the wrong, and I'm not looking at the amendment, I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay. 2018 amendment?
Correct. It was
Is that correct, 2018 amendment?
correct. It was the same amendment that allowed for the subsequent development process and the less than block by block development. It also eliminated the requirement to have the mews cut through blocks.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
I think that's the end of my question then.
Does anyone else have any questions before I ask mine? From the board? No? Okay. I'd like to bring up once again that you'd mentioned that there were 4 trash cans on this very large block. Can you point out once again where those 4 are? Because that just seems a little light for me.
Okay. They're existing. There's one down here in this corner. We've added this additional trash receptacle, trash and recycling receptacle down here.
Okay.
And then on the corner up here as well, this is one existing, and this is a new proposed, in total 4.
Okay, I would like to propose that there be more added as this whole block is being developed pretty much. And, you know, the streetscape is being done, that we need more of these trash cans to make sure that our streets remain clean. And, you know, a lot of the dog walkers also need them. So if we could, I'd like to suggest that we add more as you're going west. Like perhaps by the townhomes or at the end of, I don't know if there are any on Berg already, like at that corner of 4th and Berg and 3rd and Berg, that there are trash cans there already. I would like to suggest that we have them at all 4 corners, that you have the 2. That's my suggestion.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. The other thing that I have is that I'm assuming that the amenity decks are only accessible by residents, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, we had a whole discussion about the spacing of the trees and how we're going to plant the trees, how big the pits are going to be for the trees. Is that, or the trenches are going to be for the trees? Is that everything that we discussed was going to be done by the original developer, and that's with the city? So that's not an exception, correct?
By exception, I'm not sure what
Meaning that you're not asking for any kind of waivers or exceptions due to the plantings that we're doing the infrastructure. I'm assuming that all of that,
Correct.
or am I assuming correctly?
You are.
That's all part of the city.
You are correct that the street
Okay.
trees that are being planted will be done in connection with the infrastructure component
Right.
report, and we'll defer to the infrastructure component report.
Right, and I don't have to worry about how deep the trenches are and the kind of trees. I don't have to, and how high the trees are. I don't have to worry about any of that. Correct?
Correct. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's the city's right of way. And so the master developer, which is technically not this subsequent developer, will have to put in those trees in accordance with the city's specifications.
Okay. Okay, I think that that's everything that I have. Other people have covered everything else that I also question. Do we have anything from our planning professionals?
Barbara?
Yes.
Barbara, Jim
Go ahead.
again.
Go ahead.
Just one quick one. The issue of the street trees. I thought that the testimony, or the application indicated that the street trees would be more than 30 feet apart. Is that part of who's going to plant these trees? And if they're going to be more than 30 feet apart, why?
So the street trees within the city's right of way will be planted by the master developer through the infrastructure component report and the review by the city's engineer. We've shown, where the infrastructure component report has told us that they will be located here so that the board could see kind of in context what will be there. But ultimately, the plans for the streetscape will need to be presented to the city engineer. And then if they're in accordance with the infrastructure component report, that's how they will be planted. So we're showing them to the board here as a courtesy so that you could see where they are in context. But it's within the city's right of way. And so therefore we have to plant them in accordance with the document that the city council's adopted, which is the infrastructure component report.
Okay, let me would you just clarify that for me? Because there's an indication that the street trees are supposed to be no more than 30 feet apart. And yet, when you look at the reports and stuff that have been presented, and I know it's not Mr. Moran's testimony completely about this, but it indicates that the street trees are now on the average of about 42.5 feet apart, which again, 50% a greater distance between the street trees. What's going to control here?
It'll be the city's infrastructure component report, but I will let Mr. Moran just address that because I know we had a discussion about the location of the trees. Is there anything that you want to add to that, Mr. Martin.
I can just add that what we're showing here as far as the location and the species have been in coordination with the infrastructure component report, which has already been approved in my understanding. So that's the location has been approved, and the comment had indicated that they are greater than 30 feet, but that it was considered acceptable. I think the last statement in that comment was said that it was considered acceptable due to that fact that it's the infrastructure component report that is governing these locations.
And that approval is granted by the city engineer?
Correct. The city engineer reviews the plans before
Okay.
construction commences.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
This is Alexis. I just had a couple of follow-up questions, and my computer was bugging out and I lost audio, so I'm sorry if this was already addressed. But in this overall site rendering, the space between the townhome development and the mixed-use multifamily is indicated as a utility easement, and I'm wondering if that's a permanent easement, and is it pertaining just to access? Is it operations and maintenance? Is it monitor? What's the nature of the easement?
That I would have to defer to Sean Delaney, civil engineer. I believe he can respond to that.
Okay, that's cool. And then I know that the chairwoman mentioned wanting a higher than 3-foot fob fence there, and I'm totally open to the reasoning for that. I guess just that to me it seems like it's a very similar entry as what was designed at Vive, and that in fact if you were to create, there are already a number of steps up, and then if you were to add a higher fence, then you're just kind of creating a kind of cavernous in-between space between the screening and the whatever. And I know, I'm sure you guys will have tons of cameras, but I think it actually benefits to have it slightly more open. And even if you had a 5-foot fence, someone could climb, you can always climb it. But I defer to the chairwoman because I don't know what the particular reasoning was.
No, I actually, I'll speak to that. What I was also thinking about Vive, the way that those stairs go up. And I did forget that there were a couple of steps before you even get to it. So it would be harder to make the leap.
Right.
To try to get over it. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. I agree with you that I would take that back because the steps are there already. As long as there's no ledges they can walk on, it's fine.
Great. Okay.
I get it. You're absolutely right from that perspective.
Yeah, no, and you might have had, I just wanted to understand the reasoning. I didn't want to create kind of like an in-between space that was
no, you're
private. Yeah.
You're totally right. I was thinking of that entrance and Vive exactly.
And then my final question is, so you've indicated the green roof, you've indicated the areas that are white are the taller roof spaces that I assume have some utilities on them, but I mean, are they actually going to be white? What's the nature of that roof space?
That I would defer to the architect for that. I believe he has, in some of his exhibits, they show the rooftop, but I would defer to him.
I can bring Mr. Simon back at the end to answer that question.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions for the planning board? All right.
Through the chair.
Okay. Any? Are you okay? TNM's okay? Insight's okay?
Thank you. I actually did have a couple of follow-up questions for the landscape architect.
Go ahead.
And I also wanted to address this question of the Muse, and obviously the amendment in 2018 actually did eliminate the specific requirement for the Muse in the redevelopment plan. However, when we take a look at this plan, technically, even though that it's not a requirement, the street access or the access to the townhomes and that sidewalk sort of functionally acts as the Muse concept. And a couple of questions for clarification. Is the general public allowed to walk through that space?
I think that would be a function of the homeowners association document. I'm sorry, I guess any declarations they put on the property. I don't know that I've had the discussion with the applicant about whether that would become a public thoroughfare, but I don't think that was the intention.
Well, I would assume that well, certainly the residents, but the residents, guests, and visitors would
Right.
be able to travel through that space.
I don't think there's anything stopping anyone from physically stopping anyone from walking through the space. But I don't think it was the intention for that to be a public roadway or walkway.
But there aren't going to be any fences or gates on either the Fourth Avenue or Third Avenue areas that would prevent members of the public from gaining access to that space, correct?
No, nothing from stopping them. You're referring to, Stan, this walkway here, just so.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, the fence exists that we were referring to before. The fence exists on this space.
Okay. All right. So having said that, let's talk about two aspects, and you can defer if we're talking if you would rather defer to the engineer to talk about accessibility on those sidewalks and the step area where we were just talking about the 3-foot gate. But let's just say if I'm traveling through that area, those two pad sites, those are utility pads, are correct? The two little square pads.
Transformers.
Yeah, transformers. Okay. Electrical transformers, obviously.
I believe so.
Yeah. So what's protecting, or what's the separation, or how is a separation being accomplished between the sidewalk and those two utility transformers?
If I may, Mr. Delaney, our civil engineer, is probably in a better position to talk about the exact utilities back there and how they are being screened, how they might be accessible or not accessible. So if you don't mind, I'd like to pose those questions to him.
That's fair enough. The question that might relate on the landscaping, depending upon the answers that we get from him, might be: is there opportunity for landscaping surrounding those those two pads or those two transformers?
I mean, I could say that right now they're screened per the utility company requirements. Right, there are certain buffers that are required to the pad and the equipment. Right now, like I had mentioned before, we are screening them from the public right away on both sides.
Just from the public right away, but the people are walking past that. It's not screened by landscaping. I'll defer the questions in terms of what separates those two physically. But there is currently right now on the plans you're not showing any landscaping at that location.
Yeah, we could defer to Sean on civil. He could talk a little bit further about that.
Okay. Now, and again, maybe Sean would be the better person to answer this question, or with regards to the lighting in that area, in terms of what types of fixtures and how lighting is going to be presented. Can you speak to that, or is that something that we should be waiting?
Sean's going to be speaking about the site lighting.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. Madam Chair, that's the only questions I did have.
Okay. Jason, do you have anything as a board professional?
No questions.
No questions? You're satisfied with any issues that you have on your report for landscape architect?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay. Let's open up the questions to the public.
Okay, I show one hand raised, Mr. Mignoli. Please state your name and your address and ask your question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, hi, Ernest Mignoli, 710 Northeast 7th Street, Boynton Beach, Florida. So for the architect...
I apologize for interrupting, Mr. Mignoli. I just want to put on the record that obviously my same objection still stands. I understand the board attorney will rule the same way, but I have to submit it for the record.
Right. I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
I can do it. I can do it.
Thank
Now,
you.
counsel for the applicant has continued her objection to your having standing to ask these questions. And my response is the same as before without reiterating it, so you can...
Okay, no, I remember it. Okay, all right. I just didn't hear her. Okay, so I just wanted to ask the landscape architect. So we're talking about a freshwater pool there, correct?
A what?
Say that again?
Isn't there a pool somewhere on the property?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're showing the pool here. This is on the amenity deck, which is on the third level of the
Okay.
building.
Okay.
With
So
inside.
it's a freshwater pool, right?
He didn't testify to that.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
not.
no, but okay. All right, so then I won't ask. It's a pool. Can I ask, like, where it drains?
That would be more of a question for.
Okay, all right, then, okay. I'll withdraw that. Can I ask, like, of all the property, how much is grass and lawn and gardens and planting versus how much is building and blacktop?
I think he testified to that. I think you can add. Did you?
I mean, the square foot, did he give the square footage of each?
No, he can give you a percentage, I think.
That's all I want, like, just to know, like, if it's, I don't know what it is. What'd you say? It's an acre property? What's the property?
No, he'll tell you.
I testified that the number 21 from the Insight Review letter references 5% of tree and 5% of shrub per the property square footage. And our required for that 10% will be 11,350 square foot. And currently now we show 11,652 square foot. So that you could take that as your response.
Okay, so then the total property that your footprint is, what is it, 150, 80, 200,000 square feet?
I don't think Mr. Moran testified to the exact square footage.
Okay, all right. I'll try and figure it out myself by looking at the blocks, okay? So my question is, with the 5% and all these square feet of garden and whatever they are, planters, et cetera, when it rains or when there's storm runoff from the buildings and it gets in those gardens, where's that water going when it goes through the garden? I mean, as a landscape architect.
You're asking about stormwater recharge? Because if that's the case.
No, I'm asking a landscape architect. He said that 5% permeable, like gardens and trees, et cetera, which is permeable. So all I'm asking as an architect, he's meeting all the requirements. I'm just asking for all the water that does go through there, where's it going?
Yeah, nothing's being directed to any of these planter areas. None of the roof is being redirected to this. Anything that falls.
This is a question for Sean.
That
it's a water runoff.
Who's Sean?
Yeah.
Who's Sean?
Our civil engineer will be testifying as to stormwater, and we'll be able to answer that question.
All I'm asking is any water that gets into this soft area, gardens, and it goes through, it's in the ground. Where's that water going? I mean, as a landscape architect, not as an engineer.
It percolates into the ground.
Okay, into the ground, that's all. And there's nothing in the ground to, like adjust a water table or a connection to a street inlet or a city sewer. It just
all of that
goes in the ground.
That's all stormwater testimony, and that hasn't been given yet. Will be given.
All right. It goes into the ground. Thank you. So the engineer's next. And is there public comment tonight?
If we get there.
I get it. And the engineer is ready to testify tonight?
Yes, he is. He's the next
Okay.
individual
All right.
called to testify.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't have any other questions for the landscape architect.
Thank you, Mr. Magnoli. I show no other hands raised at this time, so we can continue, please.
Excellent. Then that's actually a great segue. I would like to call it Mr. Delaney.
Can I request a small 5-minute break?
I have no objection.
Ditto.
Okay, so let's be back here at 8:50, as close to 8:50 as possible, please.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion for 5-minute break?
I'll make a motion for a 5-minute break. This is Eric.
Thank you. Anyone second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Kurzak. 5-minute break. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Ayes have it.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
All right, I will now take roll. Mayor John Moore,
Here.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton,
Here.
Michael Manzella, Michael Manzella,
He's muted. Why don't we come back to him?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Mike, are you there?
Michael, please.
I'm here, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Jim Henry,
Here.
Jennifer Souter,
Here.
Alexis Taylor,
Here.
Eric Gallipo,
Here.
Rick Lambert,
Here.
and Barbara Kriza.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
All
All right. All right. I'd just like to mention to the board members, the public, everyone, that our intention is to go till 10. And unless the board feels differently, our intention is to go till 10, provide the applicant with the additional things that we spoke about that we would like to have at our next meeting, in addition to finishing up with the witnesses. So I think that 4 hours on the topic is a bit, especially since we have another hard day on Monday. So if that's okay with everyone, that is how I'd like to proceed.
Understood, and we will, try our best to move things along in the testimony. I'm going to call up Mr. Delaney, but before I do, I did have the opportunity to speak with my client over that short break about the trash cans in particular. And it is ultimately the city's decision how many trash cans can be within the right of way, but my client is willing to add another 2 onto 3rd Ave and another 2 onto 4th Ave, provided that it's not a hard and fast condition of approval, that it's subject to the city engineer's approval. Like, we will request that they be on the plans, and if they're approved by the city engineer, we will install them. But if for whatever reason the city says no, then we wouldn't need to come back to you for an amended approval for the trash cans. If that's acceptable to the board, we'd propose that. But we have no objection as long as the city allows it within their property to paying for and installing the additional 2 trash cans on 3rd and 2 trash cans on 4th. Okay, with that, then I'd like to call up Mr. Delaney.
Give me 1 second. I want to make this note for that possible condition.
Okay.
That will be the city engineer's approval, assuming?
The city engineer is ultimately who approves the infrastructure that goes on the streets.
Okay, I got it. Great, thanks. Sean Delaney, there you are. Okay, please keep that right hand up. That's it. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. My name is Sean Delaney, SeanDelany. I'm a principal with Bowman, licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 2003. License is currently active, and I've appeared before several boards, including this one, multiple times for projects here in the waterfront.
Right.
And I would like to offer Mr. Delaney as an expert in the field of civil engineering.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Delaney, if you could share your screen and let me know on the number of the exhibit that you're starting with.
Certainly, this will be exhibit A27. Just for everybody's sake, it's the same exhibit that was previously, I guess, testified to as A2 and A23 by the architect and the landscape architect. We're just continuing on, is the overall site rendering of the project.
All right, Mr. Delaney, you've been here hearing the testimony. We've deferred several things to you, including lighting and stormwater and parking. So if you could begin tackling those questions, as well as going over the subdivision, which is perhaps a good place to start.
Certainly. So just some pretty quick background of the property. It consists of 14 tax lots identified as block 4001, lots 2 through 15, totaling 2.61 acres in area. Fronts on Kingsley Street to the east, 4th Avenue to the north, 3rd Avenue to the south, and a multifamily residential apartment building and parking areas to the west, with Berg Street further to the west. Property is currently vacant with some limited remains of the former staging area that was used for the construction of the Asbury Ocean Club. As was pointed out earlier, the streetscape improvements along Kingsley Street have been completed in its entirety as part of the infrastructure component report. In addition, 4th Avenue has completed all of the curbing, striping, and all the improvements from curb to curb, and the sidewalk on the north side. The only thing remaining there is the streetscape from the curb to the property line on the frontage of the property on 4th Avenue. I just point out too, just for information, that 3rd Avenue down below is a signalized intersection. 4th Avenue is not. So there are some traffic control measures put in place for that as well. Then I go to the next exhibit, which is Exhibit A28, which is the minor subdivision plan that was prepared by our office and submitted as part of the application package. As Jennifer has pointed out at the beginning of the project, we are proposing a subdivision on the property. We're consolidate the 14 lots and then subdivide it into 3 separate parcels. The main parcel, the large parcel, just over 1.8 acres, will be the for the multifamily building. There's a jog at the back, the west end of that will encompass the utility transformers, and I'll point that out on the as we go through some of the other plans. The other 2 lots at the rear of the site, 202 and 203 right now, both approximately 0.4 acres in area. They are for the townhouse developments, each containing 10 units, split down the middle of the courtyard area at that location. Good point out that the subdivision that's being proposed is a minor subdivision. We'll be filing that by deed with the county, so a formal plat is not required because of that, because its classification as a minor. And also that the lot area and lot frontages of all 3 lots that are being proposed are fully compliant with the minimum standards of the waterfront redevelopment area of 15,000 square feet area and 100-foot lot frontage. The smallest lot being 17,430 and the smallest frontage being 127 plus feet. And those are for the townhome lots. Going to the next exhibit, which is A29. This is the layout and dimensioning plan sheet C4 that was submitted as part of the site plan, preliminary file site plans as part of the application. As was testified to by Mr. Simon and Mr. Moran, the eastern portion of the site will be developed as a multifamily residential development containing 206 units. That will be lot 2.01 in phase A. Phase B is at the southwest corner of the property, 10 townhouse units fronting on 3rd Avenue. And then phase C, lot 2.03 is located on 4th Avenue, also consisting of 10 townhouse units. All of these units within the waterfront right now are proposed to be rental units. And the project fully complies with all the requirements of the bulk requirements of the waterfront redevelopment plan. Those being the lot area, lot frontage, as I mentioned before, and the maximum stories for the building heights, as Mr. Simon had testified to. And we'll get into parking and the other some other items in a little bit. Getting on to circulation for the site, I'm going to talk about pedestrian and vehicular circulation. Starting with vehicular, the access to the multifamily is off of 3rd Avenue at the southeast corner. 3rd Avenue at that portion, because it's divided, runs in a westerly direction. Vehicles can turn in off of Kingsley or come in off of Kingsley to come in and make a turn into the subject garage on the ground floor. We have an ingress and egress lane separated by a small curved island in that location. And the location of that driveway is over about 65 feet from the curb return to the intersection of Kingsley and 3rd Avenue. Further up the road on 3rd Avenue is the access to the 10 units on phase B that front on 3rd Avenue. Separate curb cut comes in, provides access to the garages that are located between the 2 buildings. The buildings front 3rd Avenue for the southern buildings, and the northern buildings on that lot front that center courtyard. So the garages are opposite each other in the middle of that area. This access is approximately 185 feet separating from the multifamily, so we don't anticipate any issues with conflicts or circulations for those movements. Similarly, on the 4th Avenue side, 4th Avenue in the location of the access drive into the townhouse portion for those 10 units is on the eastbound side of that lane. So that vehicles have to come in off of Berg Street or off of 4th Avenue to come and access those townhomes in that direction. Those, once again, like I said, provides access to the garages that are at the rear of the site, which are all designed as 2-car garages for the development. Also regarding access, we do have a loading zone that's located just next to the ingress and egress of the multifamily building. The front of that is striped out in front, so trying to deter passenger vehicles from making that turn into that loading area for some reason. The depth of the building is 30 feet from the back wall to the face of the building. We have an additional 6 feet out to the property line where the sidewalk would come. So essentially it's 36-foot depth here for that loading zone. The dimensions on the interior of it is approximately 18 feet. We have 19 feet shown from curb to a stripe on the outside, but between some columns in the interior wall is about 18 feet. So that would be used for loading. We have clearances on top to be able to maintain 14 feet inside. And we anticipate the types of vehicles using this facility being, 30-foot type U-Haul type trucks coming in, backing in and unloading for those facilities or smaller. So we have designed it to prevent any of, if the vehicles do extend a little bit beyond the building, that they will not extend into the sidewalk and hamper or interfere with any of the public pedestrian access along the street frontage. I believe also in regarding the loading zone and location of the driveway curb cut, Mr. Fichter had brought up some comments in his letter. One regarding the distance to the intersection being less than 50 feet in accordance with the general ordinances. I believe he notes that a variance may be required for that. We do note it's just for a loading zone that the main access points with more of the vehicular traffic will occur is greater than 50 feet. And the loading and access to this area will most likely be controlled by the management company for the rentals to make sure that there are not too many vehicles packing up and staging it accordingly. So there's not a constant stream of vehicles in and out of this loading area. In addition, you also talked about maybe possible kind of demarcation between the two driveways. Right now, we show a striped area between that. We can enlarge that stripe, but we can throw a small curb like we have between the ingress and egress things if that's desired of the board. To do it, we did, as I mentioned, we did try to, stripe it out front to try and direct those other traffic into the area without pulling into that driveway. So look forward to any comments from the board or Mr. Fichter on that as well. Pedestrian access consists of a network of sidewalks. Obviously, as was testified to, the streetscape along all four frontages will be completed, with Kingsley being already done. The sidewalk, planters, trees, and lights will all be constructed along the other three frontages in accordance with the infrastructure component report. It also goes to the improvements along 3rd Avenue. Those full improvements and widening will be also done as part of this as also triggered by the development of the block of this project that the master developer will incorporate and prepare. Berg Street will be fully completed. Looking at some of the aerial maps and the site visits that I went through this area, it appears that half the block right now along Berg Street in terms of the pavement has been completed along with the curbing and striping. So I believe the remainder, which is the southern half down towards 3rd Avenue, would have to get its pavement treatment as well as striping and curb improvements along there, as well as the streetscape on the eastern side of Berg Street. There's a comment about some of the improvements on the southern side of 3rd Avenue as well. Right now, until the block to the south, block 4003, I believe, gets developed, the streetscape elements along that from the curb to the right of way will not be installed as part of the infrastructure components, because we don't know where the curb cuts are going to ultimately be located. They may be moved depending upon how that lot is developed. But we will install the curbing, striping, and in accordance with the existing infrastructure that's there right now, driveways to provide the parking areas, new curb lines. A sidewalk will be constructed. A new sidewalk will be constructed. It just will not have the paver band, street lights, street trees, and the full 7.5 foot width of the sidewalk in that location. For the townhomes, sidewalk, as was pointed out, we do have a sidewalk that runs between 3rd Avenue into the middle of the site and out to 4th Avenue, connecting the two blocks, essentially as was envisioned with the Muse concept originally. We just have as was testified to or pointed out, that the vehicular circulation between the two blocks has been eliminated as part of the amendment to the waterfront redevelopment plan. Those sidewalks provide access to the rear of the units. The sidewalks, they provide the access to the courtyard area in the center, as testified to, will be controlled and gated for the residents' use in the front doors. Point to point out that as we talked, that there are stairs leading up to there, and it was elevated through this area so that the front doors of the interior units of the courtyard are at grade, whereas the ones along the streets, because of the elevations to get up to that courtyard area in the garages, they are located with stairs up to front stoops at the along the streetscape. So they're elevated a couple feet, from the street to get into those units. All the sidewalks, the access points through the driveways and the sidewalks that come up into the rear of the garages, and then the continuation through the site have all been designed at a maximum 5% slope for ADA accessibility. So we believe that no ramps or railings or anything like that will be required, that we have provided a sloping sidewalk essentially for ADA accessibility to get through the site into the rear of the garages back here. I know Mr. Slith, I'm going to say it wrong, Slashek, I believe, has a question on that, which I'll answer, I guess, with some accessibility.
By the way, that's close enough.
That's close enough. So, unfortunately, the accessibility up to the courtyard area, we have stairs here, and we have through the garage entrance to get up to the ground floors to exit out a grade up front. So whether there's some kind of something inside the building that may allow for accessibility, I don't know at this point. Where else we going? Refuse pickup. Mr. Simon pointed out that there are two internal enclosures for the multifamily building that will be picked up by a private hauler. In addition, the townhomes will be stored in the garages. In preliminary discussions with a private hauler, they have indicated that their access to these facilities will most likely be coming up 3rd and 4th Avenue and backing up into the site around into those areas to pick up the trash and recycling, and then they'll exit out in the same manner and continue on 3rd and 4th Avenues. So there'll be limited turning movements, in the site. They won't be coming in, backing up, and doing K turns to get out of that facility, or backing out onto 3rd and 4th Avenues. In terms of timing of the private hauler, that will be as determined by the needs and demands of the units. Anticipate probably typically if a week for each recycling and trash. If it needs to be more, they will obviously be increased to make sure that it's taken care of. If they're not generating that much in off-season, off-peak times potentially, or if for whatever reason, perhaps it's rental, I'll apologize for that. For other times, if they're not generating as much, maybe that gets backed out a little bit, but they will be controlled by the management company and as a non-needed basis. Getting on to parking, which is always a big issue, I know, in the city, in the waterfront. On-street parking, 4th Avenue currently has 86 parking spaces along it. We're proposing to maintain the same number of parking spaces on there, and that's because of where the curb cuts are located. And we put basically it was designed with the infrastructure component report and striped accordingly. So any spaces that we may have lost or so because of the driveway access, we have picked up in other areas where maybe the muse or some other feature was anticipated based on a prior plan. So there's no change in parking on 4th Avenue. Kingsley Street, there's no change in the parking along there as well. Along 3rd Avenue, we actually are having a net increase of 10 parking spaces on the street. This was one of the comments I believe that came up during either the TRC or the City Council of trying to maximize the parking on 3rd Avenue. There are 76 spaces right now. We are proposing 86 with the layout shown. That number could be adjusted or might be adjusted depending upon the redevelopment of Block 4003 to the south and how driveway and curb cuts get adjusted. Right now, you can see there are 5 curb cuts along that southern curb line. So if a larger development comes in, it only requires 1, then some of these spaces may be able to be eliminated to allow for more parking in that area. So, but we are proposing a net increase of 10 spaces on 3rd Avenue based on this plan. Off-street parking for the waterfront redevelopment plan, 1.5 spaces per residential unit are required. The approved waterfront redevelopment plan and the CAFRA permit both envisioned these on-street of 1.5 and the essential visitor space required by the RSIS standards to be located on the on-street parking area surrounding for visitors. So that's essentially how it all transformed. We are parking, based on the proposal, we are providing more than 1.5 spaces per unit. We have 226 units requiring 339 spaces total. We have 345 spaces proposed on, we are proposing 345, so 6 more than what the 1.5 requirement stipulates. Of that, 285 are located on the site with the townhomes and the multifamily, and the remaining parking will be located in the Asbury Ocean Club across the street, with an agreement made between that property owner, as is permitted with the subsequent development agreement or redevelopment agreement for the property. I do point out that Mr. Victor points out in his letter that if we did an RSI calculation, there would be 439 parking spaces required based upon the bedroom mix, which is 90. When we are proposing 94 spaces less than that, while the waterfront redevelopment plan governs for our parking in here, we would, I guess, have to ask for a de minimis exception on that parking requirement and submit a letter to the DCA stating such. That is part of a redevelopment plan that the parking count was reduced for residential parking in the waterfront. Good to point out the waterfront redevelopment plan also does not require any parking for retail establishments. So we have 4,600 square feet, 2 units on the northeast and southeast corners. That would be handled by the on-street parking and surface parking lots throughout the waterfront. I'm going to go to the next one. So continuing on with the 60 spaces that we were talking about in the Asbury Ocean Club across the street. So the Asbury Ocean Club, when it was approved, had an excess of 110 parking spaces contained within the parking structure on site. It was actually more closer to 140 or 150 more than what's required by ordinance, but the applicant at that one added some additional spaces for the hotel and the condos for multiple spaces for units above and beyond what is required. So there are 110 spaces available. This plan, which is Exhibit A30, A30, the offsite parking plan, sheet C5 that was submitted as part of the site plan package, shows the location of where those parking spaces will be located. So there's so as you come in the parking garage, there are some spaces on the ground floor, on the first floor, immediately on the ingress line, and then you come around in a northern direction, and then there's a ramp that leads down to a lower level. So the entire lower level ramp would contain all of the additional parking beyond the several spaces that are located on the ground floor. So all of the ground floor spaces here would still be used for retail and public spaces, not retail, but public spaces on the ground floor, with these reserved for the residential units in Asbury Ocean, in the multifamily and townhouse apartment buildings for that additional parking requirement. Next, I'd like to get into talking about the lighting for the site. Mr. Simon pointed out, and Mr. Moran pointed out some of the site and building mounted features that would be proposed around the property. This is Exhibit A31, sheet C10. This was a supplemental submission that came in afterwards based upon discussion with the board engineer, Mr. Fictor's office, needing some additional information to complete his review. This was dated 5/21/21 and was a supplemental submission. This and Exhibit A32, the construction details on sheet C15, which details the lighting information. So there are several fixtures. I'll start with the street fixtures. We have the street fixtures are proposed in accordance with the infrastructure component report. They are the Shepherd's Crook type fixtures that are similar, they're already existing on 4th Avenue and Kingsley Street. We are mimicking that with the infrastructure component report and showing that along all the street frontages and all along 3rd Avenue, the center island. The lights are not being installed on the southern half until the time that block gets redeveloped. And those lights have been incorporated into the analysis for lighting across the street frontages, as well as the intersections into and out of the site. With regards to multifamily lights, Mr. Simon pointed out that there are some building accent lights located around the perimeter of the multifamily building. They are up lights, and they're lights that'll be up up and down lights that wash the facade. I'm going to switch over to exhibit A32 real quick. It is these fixtures right here in the middle, the multifamily light detail MFB with the label. So there's an uplight and a downlight that will wash the facade. Those lights are they're about 33 fixtures. They're shown with the spec right here as an incandescent bulb, but we can substitute those out for an LED fixture. It would be approximately about 20 watt LED fixtures. They're mounted about 9 or 10 feet above the sidewalk elevation. And they're there just really to wash and provide some accents to the sidewalks along the 3 frontages of the multifamily building. In addition, there are some canopies that are located on the northeast corner where the retail area is, at the center where the main entrance to the multifamily building is on Kingsley, and at the southeast corner where the other retail space, as well as over the entrance to the multifamily parking garage or parking structure. Those are small canopy lights. They're 94 of those. Those are 3 watt LED fixtures mounted about 14 feet above the sidewalk. And for back to A32, they are these small aspect little lights that are buried into the top of it, recessed into the canopies for lighting those areas for architectural accents. That's all the exterior lighting that's on the multifamily building. For the townhomes, we have multiple things. We have some bollard lights that are in the courtyard area. I believe Mr. Moran talked about those. Provide some low-level lighting in that area for soft lighting with no highlight poles that would interfere with the residents here or adjacent property owners. It's really just to light the space and a nice soft glow in that area. In addition, we have several fixtures that are located at the doors of each of the townhomes, and also at the garages. Those fixtures are mounted approximately 6 feet high. Garages have them on either side of the door. There's one light at each of the entrances to the building. Once again, they're called out on the detail sheets right now as incandescent bulbs. 100 watt incandescent bulbs. We can substitute once again those out for LED fixtures. It'd be basically just put an LED bulb inside the fixture itself on the front that's controlled by the homeowner. They are they're mounted over the front doors as a decorative aspect to light the front porch areas and the garage entrances on either side. Back to A31. We also have some wall-mounted lights on the east facade of the building that are elevated up high. They're about 22 feet in the air. They're above the second floor of the building. There are 8 fixtures. They are 36 watt LED wall packs that will shine light down along the sidewalk adjacent to the buildings, as well as the drive aisle for the parking areas. And for reference, is these fixtures up in the corner. They're typical, almost like a shoebox type of fixture, but once again directed downward. We'll wash some of the building light as well, and will come out across the way into the drive aisle and the sidewalks for lighting those areas. The final lights that we have are once again the same lights that are located on the multifamily building. They have them on the front facades of the townhouse buildings also. Above the doors, they are also mounted about 22 feet in the air. And once again, just to wash the building facades, they'll have very little impact to the streetscape or the lighting of the areas along the streets. Anything along the streets will really be lit by the street fixtures that are located along those paths. The light levels that are shown, Mr. Fichter pointed out in his review, there's some light levels that occur on the adjacent properties. Those light levels are all the result of the streetscape fixtures that are being installed that will shine light back into those properties in accordance with the infrastructure component report. So we are not proposing any of our on-site lights will not provide any deleterious impacts to the neighboring property in terms of lighting. Most of the fixtures are located on the sides away from the areas. There's no lights that are facing directly that property to the west. The site was designed to provide lighting that was needed for access at the driveway entrances and the garage entrances, as well as for safety, and it's typical of residential areas on site. The goal is not to over illuminate the site as always is the case. We don't want it to look like one of the surface parking lots down there for security. It's more trying to make more of a residential feel and I believe that these lighting levels provided are sufficient for this development as proposed. Last thing I plan to talk about are utilities, and stormwater is related to that as well. But I'm going to first talk about the utilities, which is Exhibit A33, Sheet C7, the utility plan that was submitted as part of the application. So sanitary sewer proposed, we are connecting into the existing mains located within 4th Avenue to the north. That'll feed the townhouse uses in phase 3. It'll feed the multifamily building on that area. And then we have a second connection to the multifamilies on 3rd Avenue to provide sewer. The services will all be at the rear by the driveways and garages at the rear of the townhome units. In addition, we will have separate connections for each of the retail spaces on 3rd and 4th Avenue because they may need some additional grease traps or anything else included. So we didn't want to include that with the multifamily, with the multifamily residential building and stuff, and don't know what size or what needs they'll have. So we specify a size there, but we demand better to provide it separately for them. The water is a similar situation. Water is located in both roadways. We're providing a water main up into both fire and domestic into the townhouse units. So the buildings will be sprinklered, both the townhouses and the multifamily buildings. We have water meter utility rooms located on the multifamily building, which are technically actually used for the equipment for backflow preventers for the townhomes. 3rd Avenue, same thing. Meter will be out front and brought up into the meter rooms and brought into the buildings for supplying domestic and fire to the building. We show a domestic meter pit out in the street for the multifamily building because the sizes of that will also be larger. So that'll be required to be in a pit as opposed to just a small meter at the rear. And once again, we are proposing separate water connections to the retail units at the southeast and northeast corner of the building. They'll be separately metered from the rest of the building as well. Electric and gas and the other utilities will all be run underground. As was testified to several, a lot of occasions. We're anticipating that all the meters, both electric and gas, we're hoping they'll be able to be put on that back area with a screen wall and against the multifamily building. We did take a lot of time. This was a concern I know the TRC as well as the City Council raised about screening these from the public. We originally had some of these meters, and they're still maybe depending upon the utility company's requirements or desires, because they have the last say always. They may put some meters on the exterior of the townhome buildings. We have some. We propose them in areas where maybe they can be screened appropriately from the sidewalks as well from the public, if they do in fact go there. We also are proposing hopefully that they will be able to push them onto into this one centralized area on the site that has both the gas and electric meters. The screen wall that Mr. Moran talked about is 8 feet high, and we specifically returned the ends of each of those so we could recess those meters inside there. So the wall would act as a natural screen from the public and the public view walking along the sidewalks. In addition, the meters that are located along the back of the building with the stairwell coming out and the water utility room. This was a conscious effort to put these in the stairwell, but also put the utility room in here because they provide a screen for those meters as well. So whatever landscaping there, we also have a solid structure that's further screening and blocking the view of those utilities. With regards to the transformer pads that are located in front, Mr. Moran talked about screening those and providing separation. The requirements are we have to maintain 3 feet of separation on 3 sides, and the front of the cabinet has to provide a 10-foot clear space. So we will work with the utility companies. We are trying to get some meetings set up with them to discuss the next phase of the project and really get into the nuts and bolts of providing service to the properties to service these buildings. And we will obviously, if we can provide some additional screening or move some screening around to provide a better buffer, we will look into that as well based upon their comments that they come back with. But Ms. Moran did point out we do have a nice screen up front that will block those views from the public view. We also have to make sure we maintain access for the utility companies to get to those facilities in case for repairs, maintenance, or replacement if need be. Going back to the fire service and fire protection for the buildings, We did have an opportunity to speak with and meet with the fire chief, I believe is, or the fire marshal of the town about the proposed project. One comment that came out of it was the requirement for fire department connections to be placed on the building. They did requested 2 of them to be placed on the multifamily building and 1 on each of the townhome buildings into here for them to get to. So we will work with him to provide the necessary connections that he needs to in order to ensure the safety and for him, his ability to fight a fire and for us to be able to limit any damage caused by fire on the properties. As always, as I'll say, as I've probably said many times before and we've heard before, is that all these utility locations are all subject to the final locations by the utility companies, gas and electric. We will try our best to put them in places where we believe it's best and it's best for the screening and keep out of view. But ultimately, it's their decision. I can say that the transformer pads that we are proposing here was based upon some preliminary discussions and meetings we had with them. So don't believe that they will be moved or relocated anywhere closer to the street or more visible to the public. And then we need the 2 transformers, one for the multifamily buildings and then one for the common areas and the townhomes specifically. Which leads me into stormwater management. So the stormwater management for this site, we believe we have designed it in accordance to comply with the current NJDEP and the city stormwater regulations related to a major development. As is pointed out on previous applications and also on this one, Mr. Victor points out in his review letter, the site is located within planning area 1. Therefore, groundwater recharge is not a requirement that has to be met with those regulations. In addition, water quality is currently provided by the existing water quality structures that are located within the roadways of the waterfront redevelopment area. In particular, I'm going to go to the next exhibit really quickly, which is A34, which is the offsite storm sewer plan C8. There's an existing water quality structure located at the intersection of Ocean Avenue and Asbury Avenue. And that water quality device collects all the flow along Ocean Avenue up, and then also the runs that run up 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue that are adjacent to the subject property. So any of the runoff from the vehicular areas that goes out to the street and the improvements in the street are picked up by the inlets and are conveyed down to that water quality device prior to discharge to Wesley Lake. That was all done as part of the original CAFRA permit and the conditions within that permit. And it's done by the master developer for the waterfront. So for addressing the quantity requirements of the regulations, the new regulations encourage infiltration of stormwater runoff on the property through various methods, and also small scale features or facilities to promote that, so it's spread out more instead of just being a centralized area. What we have done is provide 3 smaller underground subsurface stormwater infiltration detention basins, which will capture runoff from the roof area from the buildings and convey that into these systems for recharge into the ground. We are fully recharging the water quality storm. The larger storms will be 2 years up to the 100-year store will be contained within the system and discharged through an outlet control structure at a controlled rate, a reduced rate, and connected into the inlets around the 2 inlets around the perimeter of the site. There is a portion of the roof runoff on the Kingsley Street side of the building that does go directly into the inlets out on the roadway. And then the surface areas that are in the parking areas just are allowed to free flow along the sidewalks out to the inlets in the area. The key item here is the compliance for this. The approved CAFRA permit that was done for the entire waterfront did a whole redesign for the based on a 90% impervious, 10% pervious build out of the waterfront. The conveyance system was designed for a 25-year storm to convey a 90% impervious surfaces down to their final discharge points. Per the stormwater regulations, in a tidal flood hazard area, which this is, the stormwater quantity analysis shall only apply if the increased stormwater could increase flood damages below the point of discharge. The point of discharge is defined as the point where the runoff connects to the conveyance system or so directly off the property. So in this case, the point of discharges are all the inlets that are located along the property frontage that we are essentially directing our flow into, either through the underground systems or the overland flow that goes to those inlets. So with that, so we looked at the 100-year storm flow coming off our site, because that's what the flooding and the damage downstream would be viewed upon. And what we've done is we have detained on our site the volume of stormwater to reduce the rates discharging off our site to those that are below the capacity of the collection system along the roadway that was designed for a 25-year storm. So for instance, if the existing inlet was adjacent on 4th Avenue, say it was adjacent to, was conveying or designed to convey a 5 CFS of flow into that inlet from overland sources, our rate for a 25-year storm, our 100-year storm flow is proposed at less than 5 CFS. Therefore, there is capacity in the pipes to convey our water downstream without causing any flooding along that route because of that capacity that we're actually freeing up some additional capacity for conveyance by reducing our rates to a little bit lower than what the 25-year conveyance capacity is. So therefore, the proposed design that we are discharging into those pipes is less than what was existing, and therefore we would not expect any impact to the downstream properties downstream of the discharge point of our site. And with regards to the stormwater regs, green infrastructure, and those items, the one item big there is really putting water back into the ground. I know this came up on some other projects as well. In this case, we are putting some systems in there to put water back into the ground, so it's reducing that runoff down to the southern end of the waterfront. And believe that what we have done here complies with the regulations. It complies with the CAFR permit that was issued, and will be as definitely an improvement over not the previous applications where you might not been able to not been required to put any kind of system, not been required to put any kind of these systems on the property. There will also be some other advantage. The landscaping areas that are proposed on the site will accept some runoff, and those will go into those, infiltrate in those areas as well. Those numbers are also taken into account in the analysis that was prepared and performed for this application. I would point out that we did submit these plans and reports to the DEP as part of the requirement for compliance with the approved CAFR permit. We have not received any comments back from them, or correspondence back from them yet on those submissions. So hopefully the system, what we are doing here in terms of the analysis, is the same type of analysis that we've done on 2 other projects recently in the waterfront, which the DEP has determined meets the requirements of the CAFR permit and the stormwater regulations. And with that, Jen, I believe that's my direct that I'm finished with. I know there's some items in the TRC comments that we still have to talk about. And if you want me, I have those listed. I can go right into those.
That would be perfect. And there were a handful that we had deferred from the architectural testimony.
Certainly. So TRC comment number 2 talks about the applicant showing the calculation of the 63 parking spaces in the Ocean Club building. I provided testimony to that earlier tonight that's there, and an agreement will be put in place between the 2 parties for that use. Number 4, getting on to, actually, I'm going to go back to 4 in a second. That's regarding the stoops. I'll come back to that in a second. Numbers 12 is regarding how waste will be handled in a private hauler. I testified to that and supported the information that Mr. Simon had testified to previously. Number 13, which is the elements of green building design. Mr. Simon did talk about that. I didn't know if I was going to have to talk about some LED light fixtures and stormwater infiltration system for those components, but he touched on those as well. Number 14, the applicant shall commit to installing the infrastructure for the entire block. As I testified, it's over 50% of the block being performed, so the improvements along all the street frontages will be done. The improvements through 3rd Avenue will be done, except for that portion on the southern piece. And then for number 15, full lighting plan, ADA plan, utility plans, parking spaces, curb cuts, and any spaces being eliminated on the on-street parking. All that was I provided testimony to, and the plans were submitted for review by this board. Going back to the item number 4 with the stoops, just with some more clarification on that. And this is going back to Exhibit A29. I know we've heard some testimony from Mr. Simon, and the board had some comments about how big these stoops could be made or if they could be enlarged slightly. So the average stoop is 6 foot wide from front to back, and right now it comes out about 4.5 feet off the building to that's the landing area at the top of the stairs. So we did look as based off the city council and TRC comments about what could be done to make these enlarged to become usable functional spaces. I believe the idea was that putting a little bistro table or something out there for sitting outside in the front to engage the streetscape. And what we were finding is that we weren't able to come up with a consistent size for all of the units because of the way it's laid out. The end units on the west are located a little bit closer to the property line, so the distance there. And if you don't mind, I'll put some things in for some comparison. I apologize. I'll add some dimensions in here just so it's something that's technology at its best. There we go. So we have about 3 feet to the property line at that area. Obviously, the ones in the middle are have a little bit more room to go, and the one at the end over here, we're still looking at about 3.5 feet, and that gets you right onto the sidewalk, so that the stoop would be sitting right against the sidewalk and basically be 3 to 4 feet high with a fence on top of it, a railing flush with the sidewalk, creating almost like a barrier and a wall as you walk past it. And then the differences between the two, we anticipate that we could probably bump them out about 3 feet at most at the end here, 3.5 feet to be consistent. And we felt that it was just, what is a 3 feet or 3.5 foot extension really enough to be enough room to put a bistro chair to sit to do things on the thing for the cost and the impact of the way that the stoop was going to be so close to the sidewalk along the front. In our estimation, we didn't feel that was the best benefit for it. And going anything less than 3 feet or 3.5 feet really confines that area, because you really had a landing area up top for people coming and going and accessing into the unit. So to put a chair or something like that, we felt we needed maybe a little bit more space to really activate that stoop, and it wasn't consistent along all 5 units, and we didn't feel having odd shaped units or dimensions on each of those would be in the best interest either. So obviously we've heard the comments from the board, and I defer for any additional comments based upon the information my testimony just provided on this issue. If there's anything else that needs to be discussed, but we did look at it. We're trying to figure out if it was a usable space, and we just didn't feel the space could be enlarged enough to really make it usable to become a interactive piece, and felt the landscaping up here to soften the stoop and the stairs was a better option and alternative to limiting some of that landscaping and creating essentially a retaining wall against the sidewalk. Those are the couple items on the TRC comments.
And then I wanted to turn to the insight report.
Sure.
I believe it was marked as B1.
Yep.
And to see if there were any items in particular that you wanted to highlight that you hadn't addressed already.
I will say there's a lot of items on the completeness review and the site plan and subdivision completeness review. We discussed this with Mr. Fictor's office. I've received these comments. We can provide all that information. It's really just clarification. There's one, I believe, about utilities within 200 feet of the site that we would request a waiver for. We show all the utilities along the frontage of the property that would be impacting the subject property that we would be connecting to. So I believe that one we need, and that's item number 13 on page 4 of his review. Parking.
Item number 19, if we just take a moment, I know we discussed the parking.
Yep.
I mean, so the board is aware, as part of the subsequent development agreement, I think I stated this earlier in response to a question from Mr. Henry. The subsequent development agreement with the city specifically provides that we need to have the parking agreement for the Asbury Ocean Club space in place before building permits are issued for the project. And so we've already stipulated that that has to happen. And the agreement actually requires that, I'm sorry, the subsequent development agreement requires that the parking agreement be for a period of 99 years or the existence of the project, whichever is shorter. So just to sort of put that on the record, that the applicant has already agreed that that agreement will need to be in place before building permits are issued for this project.
I guess Mr. Henry had a question about item 31 in the report about the timing of the construction of 3rd Avenue. All of the detailed information on that plan, what we've shown is a depiction of what the master redeveloper has I believe has already designed for completed design for the 3rd Ave improvements. So we've mimicked those on our plan. They were designed by another engineering firm that works with the master redeveloper for all the infrastructure. So in terms of the timing of this will all be constructed, simultaneously as the on-site work will be done. My impression that this work will be completed or nearly complete by the time the occupancies are needed for the buildings, obviously, because we can't be building 3rd Avenue if we have access to the buildings in there for parking and stuff. So these improvements would have to be completed in order to get access to the 10 townhouse units and the parking garage for the multifamily building.
And then I wanted to have you address item number 38 and 40, but before I do, for the development review section, I do just want to put on the record that pursuant to section 3.8 of the waterfront redevelopment plan, the development controls in the redevelopment plan, quote, supersede all applicable provisions of all other Asbury Park development regulations, including zoning requirements for the prime renewal and boardwalk area.
Where are you referencing in the report?
So this has to do with development review and starts at item number 25. And that relates to chapter 30, article 5 of the development standards that are within the city's underlying ordinance. It's our contention that chapter 30, article 5 doesn't apply within the waterfront redevelopment area because it is superseded by the redevelopment plan. That is section 3.8 of the redevelopment plan.
Which number paragraph in that section are you referring to?
Well, technically, paragraphs 25 through 40 all have reference to section 30 of the underlying zoning ordinance. And so it's our contention they don't apply. That said, we are going to go through and address items where we were asked to provide testimony. So we were not ignoring them, but wanted to put that just legal issue on the record. So item number 38 and 40, there was a question about whether we would need variances from section 30. It's our position and we would not, because section 30 is superseded by the redevelopment plan and we comply with the redevelopment plan. But that said, Mr. Delaney, if you could describe the drive aisles and parking spaces.
Mr. Simon touched on that during his testimony that within the multifamily development, we have 9 by 18 stalls and 24-foot drive aisles. The waterfront redevelopment plan actually has a criteria for parking, and I think more likely related to surface parking that requires 9 by 18 stalls, which we do comply. And then in the ordinances, the general ordinances, the design standards, actually for parking this way actually can go as low as 22 feet. We are providing 24. So we comply with both. These are the 24-foot drive aisle for 90-degree parking is a typical standard. RSIS permits it as well as for streets, on-street parking for certain roadways to provide a minimum 24 feet. With that allows for sufficient backing out and turning movements for vehicles. So I do not believe a variance is required for that.
Okay, and then there's item number 40, which concerns the entrance drives to the parking area.
Yeah, and I did testify to that right now we're showing a striped area in that location, separating the two driveways. If there's something more that the board or Mr. Victor would look for, we can certainly put a small curved island like we're doing at the residential garage entrance to depict that a little bit. We just want to keep the apron and the sidewalk area pretty much free for pedestrians without inhibiting any further movements in that area. So.
But that said, we don't believe a variance is required because the section 30 of the underlying ordinance doesn't apply within the waterfront redevelopment area.
Yeah, okay. The variance he's quoting is for the distance from the driveway to the right-of-way line on the intersection at 50 feet. Where dimension from curb return to river return at 36 feet. If as you say, the underlying zoning is negated by the waterfront redevelopment plan, then a variance would not be needed. Correct.
All right. Are there any other items that I have missed in this report, the insight report, that you intended to address?
I do not believe so. I believe in my testimony, I did cover some of the comments, the testimony that was requested in the letter. So I believe that covered everything I have for Mr. In the insight report.
And we will be deferring item 42 about the development intensity to Mr. Hughes, just to put that on the record, because I know Mr. Henry is interested in that answer. And so that will be Mr. Hughes who can address that. That is all I had for Mr. Delaney. I would ask that, I know it's coming up on 10 o'clock, but to the extent that there are questions from the board, if we could ask them of Mr. Delaney, that way we can get you the answers that you may need.
Oh, I actually I agree that we need to have the board members ask any questions so that we can, when you come back, that if there's something that you need to bring, that you know it ahead of time. So do the board members have any questions that they would like to bring up, of anything that they would like to see more of, or just your questions as you normally do?
It's more, I mean, just some questions. I'm not looking for the answers now for Mr. Delaney. He can be next time. And he's going to have to walk me through. I've been looking on every sheet. I thought it was C7, where the storage for the garbage is in the basement. I can't find the rooms. My next question would be, where's the staging? I don't know if this is for you or Keenan Hughes. Where's the staging site going to be for this building? And then how long for the build out sections A, B, and C, ballpark? And then as far as the parking stalls, how many handicap spots for vans with ramps? That's all the questions I have for Mr. Delaney next time. Thank you.
We may be able to address a few of those quickly now, if Mr. Delaney. If you
Yeah.
take them
The
again.
trash storage, as Mr. Simon pointed out, and I did point out during the beginning of my testimony, there are two in the multifamily building, one on the north
Okay.
side of the building. Trash one is identified. That's on sheet C4.
Okay.
Of my plan set.
Okay.
Okay.
How does somebody get in there to pick that up?
Most likely the materials will have to be brought out to the street for pickup. So on garbage day, someone from somebody in the management company will have to bring the trash out, wheel it out, in bins or containers out to the street for the pickup, or they'll bring it, or they'll wheel it around the facility to the loading area and pick it up through there.
We're going to have to know that, because that would be a condition of final approval or preliminary approval.
Right. So if you could, let us know next time, that'd be great.
With the parking, the handicap spaces, Mr. Simon testified there are 7 within the building. 2 of them are van accessible, which is required by the ADA building codes, and the garage is substitute as that. For staging, we did submit a staging plan, I believe, as part of our construction staging plan, as part of the set. And if I can get to that real quickly. They were in sheets C19 and C20 of the plans that were submitted. We do show some construction area and staging areas and gate fencing around the property for trailers to be located. C20 shows the trailers on lot 2.02 on the 3rd Avenue townhome site. And then once the structure on the interior, the garage structure is constructed for the multifamily building, is anticipated that those trailers or the facilities of some sort will be moved inside to the ground floor of the garage. And that'll be the contractor's areas for moving wild. So the townhomes can then begin starting on 4th Avenue and working south towards 3rd Avenue.
So then I can assume this is going to be similar to like when they built the, whatever, 1101 it was called then, the Asbury Club. Like one side of both third and fourth will be shut down while this is being built. So that's why I want to know what's the time frame? How long is this going to take to build?
Right now, it's not proposed to close any of the roadways or parking along the frontages. So we are proposing to put the fence line along the curb lines and use the rear of the site to, the townhome areas to access a lot of the facilities for the building of the multifamily. And this building, because the stick building also will not have some of the cranes and the materials and equipment that was necessary to build the Ocean Club because of the 16 stories of the tower that was built on that one. So.
Okay, thank you. And so maybe just next meeting, you can just give us a ballpark as far as how long for Section A, then Section B, then Section C.
Certainly.
12 months, 18 months, whatever, just ballpark. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Does any other board member have any question for Mr. Delaney?
Yeah, this is Mike. I just had a quick question on the mixed-use building's driveway. I don't recall if you said regarding access, if it would be some kind of gate or open, or what the access would look like, and whether there would be any kind of pedestrian indication of vehicles exiting.
Yeah, I believe you got similar comments from the Ocean Club. There were similar comments from the board on the Ocean Club. I go to the looking back at the architectural plans, Exhibit A8. There will be a gated entrance for both the loading and the parking area that will be controlled by the residents. They'll be given keys for access to almost like a garage door openers, essentially, to get into and out of the facilities. And we can certainly add something on the inside as the door opens up there will be stop signs and other features inside there as it opens up for pedestrians walking across. We can add signs on the inside to make sure that they know there are pedestrian crossing areas in this location. And the gates will essentially be like a roll-up gate for the door. It's not going to be a bifold door; it'll be a roll-up gate for the access to the parking.
Interesting. Okay, I would think. Well, maybe it's getting in the weeds a little bit, but might be a lot of trips during peak hour that it might delay, kind of cars going in and out if there's a roll-up gate going up and down, up and down.
I'm sure that I don't know the systems that aren't designed them. Mr. Simon's group takes care of that and the specifications for it. I'm sure some of the roll-up of the points or similar things will stay open for a certain period of time. It doesn't open up and so allow cars to continually flow through as they keep coming out with sensors. It's not going to close. I don't believe it's going to close up on a on a car mid-block or close after every car comes in and out of them. So
no, I think that Mr. Manzella is more speaking about the volume of cars coming in and out. Not that something's going to close on top of a car, but
right.
when you have a smaller group of condos, let's say 100, the amount of times it has to open and close is a lot different than over 206 or however many cars we're able to put here. So we're talking about 285 cars coming and going. That's just, I think that's something we kind of need to think about.
Okay.
Is that right, Mike? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. I think, I would suggest maybe just an arm type gate, versus a rolling gate, but that's really, that's up for you to.
Yeah. There are some security aspects for not allowing the public into the garage. So it has to be some kind of a solid feature for pedestrians from just walking into the garage. So believe me, they have a lot of the developer here and has learned a lot from the Asbury Ocean Club and what's going on across there. So things that are working over there, things that aren't working over there will be brought over to this project and used to make this as efficient as possible.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Anyone else on the planning board?
Yeah, I had just a couple of little questions. The loading dock, are there any restrictions on when the loading dock will be open and used?
That would be controlled by the management company, who manages all the rentals for the building. They will specify for move-ins and move-outs. They'll specify times for when those can occur, and they will not schedule 2 or 3 of them on a day, or so they'll stagger them out through. That's typical of multifamily developments. Done a lot of these up on the waterfront up in Weehawken in West New York on the Hudson River, and everything is controlled by the management company to ensure that you don't have backups or too many people using that loading zone at the same time or on the same day to create traffic problems or circulation issues.
Okay, next item, is there going to be an option for charging stations for the townhouses?
I believe we are, yes, we are. There's the option for those inside the garages of those units.
No, I didn't mean inside the garages of the townhouses.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's also, and by the way, I know there was a comment too about the loading, the demand for those electrical vehicles charging stations. We have reached out to the electric company and have advised them that we are proposing electric vehicle charging stations within the thing. We are preparing the load letters for that and trying to set up meetings with them to make sure we have the right power brought to the site to handle what we're proposing to initially install, as well as the future build out, as Mr. Simon said, of up to 50% of the parking garage.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
It's more again. I just want to say, like earlier, I said maybe we should get a rendering of the meters. Mr. Delaney did an excellent job of explaining to me, so I no longer need that rendering, and I thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there's a couple of things that actually just have an item that I just like to bring up as part of Mr. Delaney's testimony. Is that would we be able to get on your plans? I know that you'd mentioned that using LED lighting would be an option, but it is not in the plans. So if you could update the plans, and I believe that was on C-15. I think that there were at least 2 places that we need the LED updated as opposed to it not being LED.
Those for the
yes, those 2.
These pendant details.
Yeah, that one and the multifamily light detail also.
It's actually, I believe it's the same one, or this one right here.
Yes, those 2. If you could just make those changes.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's anything else from the board members as far as questions.
Excuse me, Barbara, did you want to see the details, or you and John, regarding that proposed space on the roof in the north?
Well, that's when we get to actually what the additional things were. I was just trying to get through Mr. Delaney.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Is there anything else from the board?
Barbara?
Yeah.
Jim, I have excuse me, a quick question for Mr. Delaney. On the revised, I think it's C8, where you have the fixture that you're using. I'm sorry. Let me just get that. C15. I'm sorry. You show a fixture here where you're going to use it on the side of the building. It's going to wash the side of the building and also project downward.
I believe that's the townhouse you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
You were also going to use it on the multifamily, as I recall your testimony. Well, let me ask the question. You can. Is there a way that you can cap that so that we don't get much spillage above the roof line of either building that it's on?
I have to look into that with Mr. Simon's group, because they're the ones who are speccing out the lights on the buildings. I'm sure there's a fixture that we're proposing to provide some kind of a shield or an angle on it that would direct the light onto the building to wash it, so it would not extend up above the roof line. And these lights also, Mr. Henry, they're mounted about 10 feet high, so basically 1 story into the off the sidewalk. So there's still 40, 50 feet of building above it that this thing is going to wash. It's not going to get up to the top of the roof line, for light spillage for anything, a large amount of light. They're supposed to be low wattage, just accent decorative light fixtures. And that was put on the rendering that Mr. Simon had posted on one of his original, one of the initial renderings that he presented.
Well, I don't anticipate that you can eliminate it, but you can diminish the light spillage above. Yeah. I think it would be a benefit. Beneficial.
I don't know if you can see the screen, but on sheet 8, Exhibit A4 that Mr. Simon testified to, the fixtures are right here, just above the first floor, below the second floor windows, and just shooting up and down below along the whitewashing of the building. So there's still a large amount of building above it. And they're there for accenting the building and really to try and dress up the building a little bit, to provide some additional features to it. We're not relying on those for lighting or illumination of the sidewalk and pedestrian areas. That'll be handled by the street lights. So,
Thank you.
So they're not high wattage fixtures either.
Anything else from planning board members? Okay, do we have anything from our board professionals that we did not cover that you would like to have brought back if it has not been covered yet?
Yes, through the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sean, what are you going to address signage? We had a comment with regards to the details of the signage. And
We can bring that back. That's okay. Mr. Delaney is going to come back.
Okay.
We'll do that. Thank you.
I thought Mr. Simon was going to talk about that, the building facade.
Okay,
We'll have
so-
myself
all right.
or Mr. Simon will talk about it next time.
All right, when you come back, we'll talk about signage.
Sure.
Okay. Is there anything else, Stan?
No, nothing additional. Just that I think maybe at the next meeting, if there can be some level of focus with regards to the through area between the townhouse and multifamily buildings, as we were talking about it before, and the specific framework of the discussion should be as to whether or not that's a public space, and if it is, that's to be designed as such, or whether that's to be a private area and designed as such. But that could be discussed at the next
Okay,
meeting.
we can bring that back. If there's anything else from either you or Jason?
So I had a number of items that I wanted to make sure were addressed and presented to the board for your consideration tonight.
Okay.
And between the testimony of all the professionals, they've essentially covered everything that I was looking for clarification on. So I have no further questions.
Okay,
I have one.
go ahead.
Jennifer, I'm not sure I heard the criteria mentioned for the design waivers or design exceptions, excuse me. I'd like somebody to address the criteria.
Yeah, so our plan is to have Mr. Hughes provide the
Okay.
the
Just
testimony
checking.
for the criteria.
I just want to make sure I don't have a gap. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, if it's okay with the board and with our professionals, I'd like to just kind of summarize what, at least the notes that I have of what we would like to discuss next time you come to see us. But please keep me honest. If I've missed anything, speak up.
Barbara,
Go ahead.
should we complete Sean's testimony and let the public ask questions so that we don't have to
Tonight?
do that? Yeah, I'm just, unless we can carry it, no big deal. I just thought maybe to complete his
You're not-
testimony, but
I would suggest that you're going to be sitting here for quite some time before the public is done.
okay, no problem.
If it makes any difference, I only show one hand raised.
Yeah,
Yeah, we know which one it is. So.
42 years of experience tells me if a witness testifies for over an hour, you're not going to finish with that witness in 15 or 20 minutes.
No.
Okay,
Okay.
never mind.
So-
Move along.
Okay, we'll move along. But once again, please keep me honest as to what we want to have, some information that we want brought back to us. I know that Mr. Delaney had mentioned about the stoops, and there isn't a consistent solution. I understand there's not a consistent solution, but I would really request that you personally take a walk over to Wesley Grove. There isn't a consistent solution there either, but you will see how things progress over time and people live with these stoops. So I would ask that to see if we could make something work. The bike storage. Also, I know that there was bike storage. I would really ask for that to be expanded, but I would leave that to Mr. Manzella to kind of help us out to say how much more storage does he think that we should request? Because I truly think that with 200 units, the amount of bike storage you have currently is not enough.
I'll agree 100%, Barbara. I mean, unfortunately, there's not really a requirement for indoor bike storage in the waterfront redevelopment plan, as far as I'm aware. But from a practical matter, I know that those 200 units are going to store at least 100 bikes. So,
Right. So I think that we kind of have to figure out how to deal with that, especially because we're encouraging people to use bicycles as a form of transportation in Asbury Park. I know that they had, I know we spoke about the trash cans. I'd asked to see if we could have 2 more. And I know that the city has to approve. I would ask 1 more on the 3rd Avenue side of Berg and 1 on the 4th Avenue side of Berg. So that's a total of 2 because there's not as much traffic as there is on Kingsley. And we already have 2 on each of those corners. But I understand that the city has to deal with that. I have, we would really like to understand the rooftop because I know that it was representative. And I understand that it's something that's created, but we need to really understand what is represented versus what is real. Because we're approving this based on what we see. So something that's representative is really hard for us to say, yes, this is okay. Same goes for the rooftop potential northeast corner. We need to know what that is. Is it a bar? Is it not a bar? Are people going to be able to have music? Is there going to be a sink? If there's going to be a sink, is that's going to be a bar? We really need to understand that's going to be. The other thing we have, the blank walls on 3rd Avenue that Mr. Manzella brought up and Ms. Souter, the consideration of having taller plantings there to eliminate the blank walls as much as we can. And that was, I believe, around the corner from where the townhomes started, I believe. That corner was the issue. And the LED lighting we talked about, that we were going to change that on that plan. I think that that's all I have that we were going to be bringing, that we would need to be brought back. Does anybody else have any other notes that I may have missed?
This is not an additional note because you mentioned the roof. This is Jen Souter, the architect coming back to discuss the roofing material.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you're right.
But I did not bring this up, but I do have another question for the architect too around the roofing. So
okay,
he's coming back, then we'll address it.
Yes, they're coming back, and you're right. But we need to address the roofing because that was not addressed during the presentation, from what we remember. And I would strongly appeal for us to keep the green roof potential that you mentioned that was going to be there. I know that there's an extra cost, but that is something that I think that this board is very interested in. Anything else that anybody else that I might have missed that we need brought back?
Mayor Moore had 2 comments about the trash pickup procedures.
Yes.
And then also the schedule for construction, rough timelines.
That's right. And that you did say that there will be no closure of roads. I got that in big letter. I've got that in capital letters.
We are not proposing any closure at this time. If that changes, obviously it's something that has to go before the city council and has to be discussed with them, but we are proposing no closures at this time.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything? Okay. All right. I have the next available date to carry this is August 9th is our next available opening. So
9th.
The 9th. August 9th.
So I need to know from Mr. Delaney if you're available that evening.
I'm available.
And Mr. Hughes, I know you haven't testified yet this evening, but you're out there. If you could let me know if that's acceptable.
I'm available on August 9th.
And the client is asking now if there's any available possibility for a special meeting before then.
We've already, actually, the board is already doing an extra special meeting in July and an extra special meeting in August. So we're already doing extra special meetings. Extra special. Not that you're not special, but we're already doing 2 special meetings between now and then. So I'm going to have to say no at this point.
And
Sorry.
I assume the regular, I understood. I assume the regular meetings are booked already in July.
Yes, they're all booked.
Okay.
They're, I'm sorry, but they are all booked.
And of course, Smith, if we do have a cancellation before August 9th, I will, of course, let you know. And if you agree to renotice.
If that occurs, you'd have to renotice, yes.
Yeah.
And just for notice purposes, is it my understanding that the August 9th meeting will be in person?
As of now, it is decided that it will be in person.
Yes.
As of now, we are looking to come back in July, start the meetings in person in July, if everything works out. If everything, if everything is set up the way that we're requesting it to be set up, that's the intent. If it doesn't, then it's going into August that we will be going to person. But our intention is to go in person.
Okay.
Okay.
We have to carry the date, time certain we would need a motion, I assume, without further notice. And I'd need the consent of the applicant to extend any time within which we have to act until that date, at the least.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So can we?
Okay, can I get a motion? I'll motion to move this application without notice to carry it to August 9th at 7 p.m. It's a regular planning board meeting, not a special meeting. It's a regular planning board meeting.
Jim Henry, so moved.
More second.
Okay. I have a motion by Jim Henry and a second by Mary Moore. All in favor?
No.
Aye.
Do it by voice vote, please.
You want to do it by vote?
Yes,
Sure.
a formal vote is necessary.
Mayor John Moore,
Yes.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton,
Yes.
Michael Manzella,
Yes.
Jim Henry,
Yes.
Jennifer Souter,
Yes.
Alexis Taylor,
Yes.
Eric Gallipo,
Yes.
Rick Lambert,
Yes.
and Barbara Kurzak.
Yes.
Thank you. Application carried to regular meeting of August 9th, 2021, 7 p.m.
Without further notice.
And
Without further notice.
in person at City Hall.
Correct.
That's the intention, yes.
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer, for bringing that out. Okay.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I can.
Don't all jump at it. Okay, I heard Yvonne Clayton motion and Michael Manzella second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any
Any
opposed?
Yeah, okay. Now, hearing none?
Nope.
None. Okay, and then you can all jump off, but I just want to share on the screen. Our next planning board meeting will be a virtual meeting on Monday, this Monday, June 7th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And the information on your screen is for the next meeting. It is also on the city website as well as the planning board page. Thank you, everyone,
Okay.
and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.